We're gonna just... Alright. Yeah, I'm gonna do an intro. I think I can do that.
You've got the sexiest voice, you have to do it, man.
Oh, but I get banned if I do it too sexual, right?
Okay, not too sexual and don't show nip, and we're okay.
Alright, this will be a non-nipple intro. What is going on, guys? It's Yoji. Welcome to Baeclast episode 3. Today, we will talk about stuff like maps, strands. Yeah, that's basically the only map. And we'll talk about logouts and hardcore and softcore and all that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about making builds and tools for making builds, especially path of building, and about keystones and about whatever else comes to mind. Where there will be lots of tangents because we are here with Ziggy, Raiz, General Zoe, Tarke and myself, and we'd love to talk about everything except for the topics of the podcast.
Perfect.
Something like that.
So
that was really good for a non-nipple intro.
That was very good. Premium levels of nipples hidden. Well played. But so on that note, Raiz, you want to talk about SEXtant, so go for it.
I talk about sextants?
Yeah.
Well, I think sextants are really cool. I think everybody should use sextants.
I think sextants are really cool, right?
Yeah. No, I'm looking at the thing. It's just sextants. I mean, I think sextants are a great way to balance out the atlas a little bit better. I think the community getting better about knowing about sextant blocking and how to really utilize sextants well could lead to such things as Strand not being the only map, for instance. And yeah. That's about it. What do you guys think about sextants?
I think the overall theme was...
Oh, he's gone.
Rip.
He's gone.
For fuck's
I
sake,
didn't want to hear
Raiz.
his opinion anyway.
Take a breeze from him now.
Oh, you're back.
Experience better before 2.0 came out, and probably not, right? So, I mean, now
He's
we have
back.
Atlas, and that's... Wait, what happened?
You disappeared for a bit.
Roll over.
You dropped.
You got hit by the
end of
nerf
the
hammer
sentence.
halfway through that, man.
I have been getting DDoS for like the last 2 months, so I have a VPN up right now. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
you
You're
did.
back.
I'm back.
You
Okay,
just
okay.
froze for the whole time, entire of your answer, basically.
Oh man. Okay, what I was saying was that you know, we gotta compare like pre-Atlas to what we have now, right? And I'm pretty sure everyone agrees that nobody liked how maps was before. It was random. You had to do some pretty crazy rolling just to sustain. And you know, now we get to like kind of play how we want on the Atlas. I mean, sextants, I don't find myself using them that much because they're expensive, right? And then because I don't like trading, I'm not gonna go out of my way to try to get like a bunch of, you know, whites, yellows, and reds. But they do add a little bit of extra, I guess, juice to your gameplay, and that's kind of nice.
I disagree with the
What?
statement about maps. About maps not being fun before. I feel like PoE kind of, due to sextants and due to a lot of the changes with the Atlas, be it very good. I think when it comes to the sustain, it's really fun. I do feel like maps are maybe a little bit too easy to sustain, especially with sextants. You can sustain blue maps essentially if you're using sextants, and oftentimes the sextants don't really add difficulty. They just kind of add mobs, and mobs don't really do much unless there's something else attached to them, like bloodlines and whatnot. And I think it was fun before, where if you were to drop a high tier map, it would be worth multiple exalts, where nowadays a tier 16 doesn't really sell for much. So I think the better thing would be if they would connect these two things rather than going from one extreme of like exalting maps and divining them and having to play in a party and never getting maps anyway, even if you do all these things, to now the other extreme where it is a little bit too easy at times.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I don't really ever get excited about maps dropping anymore.
Yeah.
But I do also kind of have a similar thing with Cutie Dog. I don't really use sextants. The only time I ever really use sextants is if I'm like blocking stuff out of my atlas, so I'm using them for the vendor recipe. Or if I'm about to do like a major farm session with a group of friends together, then I'll be like, okay, there's a bunch of us here. We can pool our costs. It's worth it. But I think, like, one of the issues that I have with it, and I think this is kind of the issue that the Atlas system has in general, is while it's very good for the average player in making mapping more accessible and having the better drop rates obviously makes it way more accessible, sextants make no sense to the average player because you just hover over it. It doesn't really give you any information. And a lot of the Atlas system is like, you go watch this guide to then have an idea of how it's working. But in most cases, people watch the guide and they don't even know how it works. They just carbon copy what the guide said.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that Atlas could really improve on, because the amount of times people have said, "Oh, how does shape strand setup work? How does this work?" And I'll like link them the relevant video. They watch the video, they copy it blindly, but they haven't absorbed any of the information. And I think Sextants have that same problem with that. They might see like Pox, what he was doing last league, and they're okay, so I use the Sextant here, and that's the only times they ever use it. So.
Yeah, especially a lot of the mechanics of Sextants, like for example, how you can chain block through the Atlas are not explained well anywhere and are really hard to grasp the first time you actually try to understand it. Because what you can essentially do is if you have a map that is affected by a Sextant, all maps affected by that Sextant cannot roll the same mod anymore. And then if there's a map next to it that is affected by that map, that chains over. That's basically how it works. So you kind of can have like super complicated like alignments of Sextants around the map you actually want to run, and then basically you have that thing almost only roll good mods. And that, to understand that, how that works and actually get the layout, and also it's pretty difficult to see. Like you have to get an Atlas image where the radius of the Sextant is already put in, so you can even see which maps are too far away and which ones are not. Because there's no... I would love to have the effect that you can right-click a Sextant and hover it over a map and see how big the radius would be, so you can actually see before using a Sextant if it would actually apply. But yeah, it's not explained anywhere, and the Atlas kind of like is lacking a tutorial already for the most part, so that doesn't help. Like the whole shaping and shape strand thing is already hard to explain to some people, like if they're not used to how map sustain works and how the mapping drop system works. Sextant just makes that even more difficult.
Yeah, but isn't that weird? Like how in the past players would always look for this edge in something as important as, I mean, maps is basically endgame, right? People would always look for the tiniest edge they could get. When it comes to Sextants, I feel like what you talked about, Yoji, just Sextant blocking is really not popular knowledge whatsoever. It's like it's this really cool, very complicated thing that people just kind of don't care about because, I mean, why should they if they can just sustain maps without it? That's partially my big problem with it, that it is just too simple.
I kind of I feel like I have the perfect example of that. So this league is the first time I actually bothered doing the kind of like unsealing maps and only shaping the right ones and stuff like that. Before I was just like, I'll do every map just for the challenge of it. So I started doing the shape strand thing this league and I only had like 34% bonus. So I just unlocked half of the maps in the lead up to shape strand. Shaped my strands, was just using random Sextants next to it. Didn't do the Sextant blocking. I only learned about that the other day, in fact. And I was still sustaining shape strand easily, so I didn't really have to kind of look for that edge. There was not much reason to do. I've since gone ahead and done that, and now I'm getting even more shape strands, dropping in strands, and getting more in XP from and whatnot. But yeah, well, it wasn't even really that necessary. So I'm kind of in agreement with Rise on this. I like the idea of Sextants, but they kind of just feed into what I think might be the existing problem of the Atlas, is that the easy sustain is allowing a situation where we are only running a very, very, very small handful of maps, not even a handful of maps, like 3 maps max, or just the one.
Yeah.
Which, if you remember, the complaints about the old map system was the fact that you couldn't sustain. The fact that you couldn't sustain meant that you were just running the same few maps again and again and again, right? Because you couldn't really get any variety of maps because they just weren't dropping. So that was the complaint. So now that we have easier map drops, we should be able to run a greater variety of maps. And there's a lot more maps at the end game levels, but we're still running less maps than what we were running before. And it's not a problem yet, right? People aren't complaining yet, but I feel like they're going to be in like a couple of leagues' time.
Yeah, but this time people are doing it by choice.
Yeah,
people got to choose the layout. That's the difference.
Yeah.
But I mean, are people even choosing the layout now? Because I kind of make the argument of, again, it's the same thing as before. Of X streamer has said this is good, so I'm doing this. There's no choice in it. It's just like, okay, unlock everything 1 to 9. Some people unlock all the 10s as well, and then it's like before Strand, there's some choice. You want to do Mesa? Do you want to do this? And it's like, then I just spam Strand. I don't know if this is different for Cute Dog or people in hardcore who do the very high-end maps. But this league, all I've really done is chain Coward's Trial, which is seriously underrated, until I can chain Mesas, and I just spam chain Mesas and Strands. and I can just infinitely sustain those two without any work. Now, I haven't been pushing above that. Like, my highest character statistic's only been 91 and a couple of 90s. So I don't know if the people doing the Guardians, they really need to, like, take advantage of the SEXtant shaping. But for now, it seems like there's really no choice at all in how you set up your Atlas. Just, do I want to shape it, or do I just say fuck it and unlock everything? That seems to be the only choice to me.
Yeah.
I think streamers running, certain strategies with their Atlas, yeah, it does affect things, but at the end of the day, I think most people care more about what are they enjoying. Like for me, I can say with the builds that I play, if I take a look at all the maps, and if Crystal's like, okay, here's the beta for streamers, you can do any map you want, you get unlimited amounts, I'd still probably do strands and atolls. It's fun for me to actually do those maps. It's not because it's the most efficient. It's not because I just get to use a white sextant on dunes to make it a little bit juicier. And then also one thing I did is when I was on my band account, I had minimal stash tabs, right? So what would happen is I'd get all these like tier 13, 14, and 15s, and it would take up all the stash space. So what I did is I never trade maps because it's so annoying going back to town to sell a 3 chaos map, a 2 chaos map. But because I was running out of stash space, I listed all my 14, 15s for buyouts, and every single one of them sold within a few hours. So I think there's still a lot of people who are choosing to buy the maps and run the maps that they have most fun. I don't think it's as widespread that like everyone's like, I have to use strands, it's just for a lot of people that is the most fun option. Like I don't like when I shield charge, I hit like a rock or like a wall, and if you run things like cells, torture chamber, even like a lot of the high layout ones, like what's like abyss core, like you're gonna be basically temp chaining yourself because you can't move around very effectively, and that's not very fun for the game, right?
But would you like this to stay forever like this, like just running strands? Do you like him that much?
Well, I mean, if I had obviously we don't live in a perfect world where they can like just bring about these sweeping changes, right? It took them how many years to get the map system updated to what it is now. But what I have seen is they've put in the patch notes recently things like, we've upped, well, they said this doesn't feel like it, but they've said things like we've upped density and monsters and stuff like that to kind of try to make the maps on par with each other. Now, we all know that's not the case right now, but they can't just do it where, like something I was talking about in my stream was, what kind of quantity and pack size bonus would they need to put on a cells or a torture chamber for you to run that, right? Would it be 100%, 200%? Would it be like if you full cleared a cells, you get an exalted orb? Would people still run that or no? It's like, and that's an extreme example, but it's something to think about. Like sometimes there's not enough they can do for someone to just want to lazily play their game. And Chris has said, this is a game where he wants someone who works a day job. They come home, they relax, they put on the TV and they run a few like maps and have some fun, right? And lots of the map layouts really hinder the aspect.
How would you feel, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot recently, if instead of Strand, there was Strand with like 7 different recolors? Because even though that wouldn't actually do anything, to me that would add a lot of variety. And I think for a lot of players, if there were just more maps with very linear layouts, but they at least visually look different, it would be some variation. I think that's the one like good thing about the Diablo Greater Rift thing, is like every time you enter into a new level, it visually looks different. I think a lot of the Strand burnout is the fact that it's always the exact same area over and over again. And I think one of the nicest thing about Atlas was, the first time I did Atlas and finding all the new maps, was seeing all these amazing new layouts. And the thing which everyone is excited about for Acts 5 through 10 is all these really amazing new zones. So it feels really bad that you put all of this work into designing these environments, and then it's like, and here's a stormy beach.
Two in chat are saying map MTX.
Oh, dude, that'd be amazing.
I'd buy that.
I would buy the fuck
Strand
out of that.
1,000% brighter or something. Weather effects.
That would be so good. I wonder if they would actually make money on that.
They
Probably,
would.
right?
They really would.
I know at least
I'd be
one person
upset if they
on
did
this
that.
podcast who would buy that.
Who would justify the entire thing.
Yep.
He solely would sponsor it.
Be nice.
Do you guys think the Atlas should be about allowing you to run the maps or the map that you like again and again and again, or it should be about making that map that you like juicier?
I'd say the second one, I think.
So that's kind of where I feel like
customizing the map
it
itself.
is. Yeah.
I
I
don't
feel
know.
like
I actually enjoy running different maps, and I'm one of those people who just unlock most of the atlas, and like I just run the maps. Like I will skip the maps that I really dislike, like cells or whatever, like the really horrible and annoying layouts or bosses that my build has trouble with. But I will just run the maps that I kind of enjoy. For example, what's called High Gardens. It's a map that I like. The boss is kind of fun to do. As it's kind of linear, it's not horrible, so I will do that. For example, if I drop it, but I won't do cells or torture chamber or whatever like this, where you actually take forever. I will skip those. I will do all the like somewhat enjoyable maps too, and of course do the ones first that I like best. And yeah, I will put sextants around the maps that I usually run and try to run those like Mesa, Dunes. I really like Dunes, for example. I like these just open like maps, like Graveyard or whatever. Those layouts I actually like a lot. I know they're pretty simple, but they're kind of fun to run for me.
I think
Really
one thing
depends on your
which
build.
would be nice, which is kind of missing from the system, because when I first heard about Atlas, the way I was thinking about it was like, oh, cool, I can tailor the maps around my build. So if, depending on what build I'm playing, I'm going to be running these certain kind of maps, but that doesn't really happen at all. And I don't know if that's because of like the mobility skill meta or whatever, but it would be way more interesting if it was a case of I'm running these particular maps because my build is very good at killing these bosses, or it's very good at handling this layout. But with the current way that the game performs, you just always pick the most linear. And
I think sextants could fix that, honestly. If like the sextant knowledge becomes more and more popular and GG states that they're building the atlas, because they're gonna be implementing new layouts, right? So they obviously have in some way they have to reshape the atlas. And I think that would be something that they could do that would be really cool. That if sextant blocking would become more popular, you could really build your sextant around your character or your personal style. Because right now, I mean, you know, I'll run a strand or two. I'll run a lot of strands, but mainly because I like playing efficiently, right?
Yeah.
To a certain degree, and there's nothing that comes remotely close to the efficiency of a strand or an atoll or shore. I'd say those are the three big ones, and it's mainly because of the sextant stuff, right? Even if I run a map slower, already I feel like I'm at a disadvantage if I don't put a sextant in that specific map. So that's a big problem.
Just briefly before we move on to something else, how, like, have any of you guys been in the case of I want to farm the high bases? Like, are the high bases enough incentive to push into different map types, or just not at all?
Not yet. Not
Early
yet.
on can be, but it's not the reason you do it. Like really.
Yeah.
It's more like I look for, if I have exiles on a map, I'll run it because they can drop all the bases. That's mostly what I look for. Like early in the league, I'm always happy to see some extra exiles in some way in my map, but that's kind of like really it.
Like, what would they have to do to make you go, I will clear this tier of maps to get opals? Like, do they need to make the items better, the items rarer, or like, is it just never going to be a thing?
Yes, I think they need to make crystal belts better. Like
Yes.
just double the it's fine.
and opal
I'll
rings
do
as
my
well.
high gardens and stuff.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, the bases are still pretty cheap, even though they're rare. And so if you're like not so good at crafting or you have no idea what you're doing, like me, I'd rather just wait on PoE trade and buy it when someone's already done the work for me. So that way, like, it's not worth it for me to go after those bases.
Okay, that's
Am I back?
You're back now.
Yeah,
You cut out for
a
like
little bit.
a little bit. It's fine.
Okay.
When you were playing solo self-found Rise, did you have the incentive to push for the crystal belt, or did you not even bother?
I thought about it for a bit. I mean, I was doing a lot of shipyards, I think, drop crystal belts. I was doing a lot of shipyards, but because naturally it took me a lot longer to shape the atlas in a way that I like, right? Because before I didn't do the strands, I didn't do the shores, and I just couldn't set it up before. But now I decided that I'm gonna do it. But it took a lot longer because you have to unshape so many maps off of your atlas and all that. So I ended up running a lot of shipyards, and in probably like 50 to 60 shipyards, I haven't found one. So I don't know if that's bad RNG or if that's normal, but I feel like that's kind of normal, to be honest, because the price is there. Like on hardcore, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah.
They're like 60 chaos or something. Yeah. So I would probably not do that, but in like a trading environment, there's other benefits to pushing higher maps. I mean, obviously people need those higher maps to shape their atlas the way they want. But it's such a short-lived thing that only a couple people get to experience who really get into those high maps fast. It just fades away a little bit too early. More EXP would be the solution, I think. The higher maps giving more EXP. Then people would feel like less of a fall off maybe when they're leveling up.
Yeah.
Maybe that would help out.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right then. Well, if anyone else has anything else to go for Atlas, go for it now. Otherwise, I'll move ahead. All right.
I think that it being most efficient to have like the same setup that is easiest to sustain is going to be a big problem in the over the next 3 to 6 months if it doesn't change. So I agree with I understand Cute Dog's point that he likes playing his shield charge fireball builds and so on. And for those builds, you want to be running, you want to be able to run those same sorts of linear maps that are really enjoyable to run those on. It's you want people to be able to play in a way that's just most pleasurable for them as well. But it also being the most efficient way to play, I feel like is a problem. I actually fucking love doing indoor maps, and I would love if some of the high level indoor maps felt a lot more efficient and a lot more rewarding, I guess. Whether it be through loot or XP.
That's why so much I feel like the Sextants are the solution to this, because I don't want to take that away. I don't want to be now I get my indoor maps and you're never running a Strand again. You got to do these. But I feel like with the Sextants you can really build around anything you want. I was playing a Kinetic Blast build recently, and indoor maps are the best. And even though I had sort of a mobility skill, they still felt okay just because my build worked so well with them. But again, I felt like I can't really build my strategy around them because, with the Sextants, without the Sextants, they're sort of sustainable, but not enough, not quite enough.
Is it just map positioning change you think needs to be happen? They need to you really carefully think about where each map goes?
That's the thing. Then this is such an impossible task for somebody to figure this stuff out.
God.
I mean, you would have to literally put in throwaway layouts where it would be okay, this map has 6 possible Sextant blocks, but that map has 11. So now the map with the 11, we have to put some throwaway maps that nobody likes. Get all the cremas and the cells in there. Nobody fucking likes those. So just put them as throwaway maps, kind of like uniques, and then maybe eventually improve those too. And the people that really like them would still have an option of 4 instead of an option of 8 or 6 Sextants to block out or linked into it. Yeah.
How about, this is completely left field, if the Atlas was rotating? Because I think one of the things that people kind of liked about warbands and Essence was the people who wanted to, they could get on Reddit and chase it, and there was that weather chasing aspect of it. So what if the Atlas was constantly shifting? And that would make sense from a lore perspective with the Shaper trying to control it all. So for a certain week or whatever, you'd be oh, there's this really good Sextant layout, so the people who want to do that can run crazy Sextant layouts, and then the next week it's something different. For the average player, it won't affect them at all because they are still running Strand all day, every day. But if just every now and again, the Sextant position moved, it sounds really complicated and say, can I say it? It seems like a terrible idea. But I don't know.
I like the idea, I just don't think it would work. People would just get pissed off.
Yeah, I think it would piss off the people, especially those who don't have that much time to play. So imagine me shaping my Atlas this week, and next week when I play, the Atlas is different. They're I didn't even get to use it. Or stand the
Oh no, I'm not saying reset the Atlas, but I'm just saying if some of the positions moved.
Yeah, but I put my Sextants in a way.
Oh, true.
Oh yeah, layout and the layout moves.
I get that. Yeah, that's fair.
I don't. Maybe Tarke, maybe you can get a straw poll in chat. I don't think the casual player is doing mass Strands. I really don't think so. I think people put too much weight on elitist streamers and elitist people on Reddit making fun of people not Strand viable or not running Strands in 2017, and they hear too much of that and they don't think about PoE has a lot of players, and I'm sure in most of our chats we get the question asked, how do I sustain Strands? I played for 10,000 hours, this is 170, and all this stuff, and I still haven't dropped a single Strand, and that's a very common question. And I don't think overall, people are always going to try to do the most efficient thing. There's going to be a small group of players that want both the XP and the loots, right? And so no matter what you do to the Atlas, people are going to find that thing that allows you to get the most experience or the most loot. And right now it's a Strand because with the blocking, like the Strand blocking is easy mode once you do it once because it's just the Dune Sextant that you use. Like there's things like shore blocking that is like the next step up. I was talking to Wins, he's another streamer, and the shore blocking is like a complete nightmare compared to Strand. So it actually requires a little bit of like micromanaging, way more than Strand does. Strand, you just like kind of throw the Sextants around it, and with usually like all white Sextants, and then you're fine. But so I think there's not much ZiggyD can do to like try to funnel us into like spread us out across the Atlas. People are always going to do the most efficient thing if they can, or at least a small subset of people will.
Yeah. I just threw something together, and if you see it's currently 46 yes, 54 no, but it's only like 260 votes, so...
Yeah.
And again, the kinds of people who would watch a Path
Yeah.
Exile podcast, like it's rigged from the get-go.
More dedicated, yeah.
So
maybe that's why people aren't, because I'm actually like have been curious why people aren't complaining about the fact that they're only running like 2 to 3 map types and why they're only seeing streamers run the same maps again and again and again. And I'm thinking maybe it's kind of this delay where it takes a few seasons for this sort of stuff to really catch on for the average player, or it's like only kind of like maybe you're right. Yeah, maybe not actually that many people are just chaining Strands at this point, but I feel like as time moves on, that will become the case though.
Is it sort of like Leakstones though? Like, do you think it will eventually get there? Like everybody kind of expected that the micromanagement of Leakstones is eventually gonna like reach a boiling point. Do you think this is gonna get there? I think it's a guaranteed.
I mean, I already have people. I mean, I always have people raging in my YouTube comment section. But like the biggest thing was why are you always doing the same maps? And a lot of it falls in the same like hardcore, softcore argument. But I've noticed over the last week, it's just like always Strand, Resin, Sleeper. So there is like a vocal minority there.
You guys say that you don't get that. We get that a lot.
Yeah.
Like I get that all the time. People complaining.
Yeah. So it definitely does exist, but I don't know.
I think Sextant blocking is new because there was a Reddit post that made it to the front page. Like it was like a whole run through of exactly how like neighbors of neighboring maps works. And although I've done it before, but I was reading the post and I was like, what is this talking about? I have no idea what's going on here with like the letter combinations, and people were like drawing Venn diagrams and like posting them in the comments. And I was looking, I was like, wait, like I didn't understand any of it, but like from doing it, I was like, yeah, just throw them up around things that touch air, lake, and peninsula, I believe. And then like that's like an easier way to explain it. But I think like that Reddit post maybe scared some people. They like saw it and they're like, I have no idea what's going on, so I'm just gonna throw on Sextants whenever I can.
Yeah. That's the great. Imagine the people who figure it out, the ways to progress through the Atlas faster through like shaped maps. That blows my mind that you can like vendor specific shaped maps that you that you only shape because you can vendor them for a map that's like across the Atlas. So you're trying to get to like a high garden, which is up here, and you're down here in a precinct, and you start to like shape your maps around that, and then you vendor them for like maps that shouldn't really be vendorable for that. It's like crazy. And they never talked about that. The wiki doesn't have that either. Like the wiki doesn't have that. If you specifically shape this map, it will vendor into a whole different thing, and it really does.
Yep.
Which is really freaking cool.
I noticed that when like trying to do 3-to-1 vendor recipe at some point, I just for fun put in 3 vendor 3 shaped maps. I was like, wait, this is like over there.
Yeah.
I just randomly noticed, but yeah, I don't know if there's anyone who has ever like put together the information about how all the shaped maps vendor for. Because for like maybe for self-found that could be useful, because sometimes you have that problem where you kind of like progress, like let's say the bottom left part of the Atlas, but you just don't drop any top right maps because you're not running them anymore because you got all the higher tiers on the one side, and yeah, it's a bit weird.
Well, Yoji, thank you for volunteering for making that video. We're all going to really appreciate it when you get it all together. But
yeah, I think it will probably happen
map.
in 2020 or so.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Okay, well, to move away from the Atlas, so logouts have been a topic always, and Ziggy, you recently had a conversation with Chris Wilson about logouts. So do you want to divulge?
Yeah, I spoke to him in New Zealand. Sorry, no, in Sydney recently about it, and then I asked him to write me a bit of a quote as well because people were kind of quoting what GGG has said in the past, and also, but then also be saying, well, that was a long time ago. Maybe their opinions have shifted and stuff like that. So I thought I'd get Chris's actual quote, but I actually want to hear your guys' thoughts on like logouts and stuff like that before I lay out Chris's things, and I don't want to influence discussion with like GGG's quote, essentially, if you catch what I mean.
Okay.
That'd be good.
All right. Well, normally I don't use logout macros. I used to use one before. I changed PC, couldn't be bothered to install a new one, and found I preferred running without it. I didn't use logout macro for this entire league. I didn't log out once during the mapping process. The one time I did, I died to the DX11 crash. I raged like a bitch, and then I installed a logout macro, and I haven't ripped since. So say what you will from that. Logout macros are good. I don't understand why anyone wouldn't use them. I don't understand why people get so triggered when other people use them, because that's like saying, oh my god, you're wearing a green t-shirt while you play Path Exile. I fucking hate you. Green is a horrible color. Ban. Like, I don't know. I don't understand people.
I agree. I hate logouts. I think they should be removed from the game. I use them because they're a necessity. I wish they were in there. That's basically my thing. Yeah. It's just a necessity. Like, if I want to play efficiently, which I like, if I want to race, I feel like the game's built around them for the most part, and that's been the case in the past. Maybe it isn't anymore. I don't know. We'll find out. But yeah, I feel like there are definitely upsides to having an instantaneous logout that a lot of people don't take into account. Like, for instance, the fact that, you know, when you disconnect, you only have those like 4 to 6 seconds or whatever that it takes to log out. But in this case, for this not to be abusable, when somebody disconnects, now it will wait until the message reaches the server, and then it's going to start the countdown of you like logging out if you were to have a logout timer, right? So if the logout timer is 5 seconds, then it would be, you know, 9 to 11 seconds instead when you disconnect, which is more than enough to kill a character rather than 4 to 6 seconds. So there's definitely upsides to it. Or for racing, for instance, I mean, I know nobody gives a shit about racing, but it does make a pretty big difference. Like, if those 5 seconds, a couple, you know, if somebody just done a good roll with finding scrolls, then that person has a significant advantage to the other person who has to wait 5 or 10 seconds or whatever it would be for people to get out. But yeah, I think it's kind of a relic of the past. Like, in the past, the game was really built around logging out. Probably not so much anymore, but it's still super efficient to use them.
I think, like, aside from the whole like speeding up perspective, I think as long as logging out is in the game, like instant logouts are in the game, you kind of have to design the game in a way that it's still dangerous, because if the game's not dangerous without, I mean, it still is, so it's not a problem right now, but you still have to have things in the game that could kill you. Even if you have the option to logging out instantly. So if everything in the game would be telegraphed with like a super long telegraph, you would never die if you have instant logout at hand and played like somewhat well. So that's kind of a problem. So I feel like that should kind of like be a more clearly understandable and like clear decision by GGG to like say if they want logouts in the game or not, and either they remove them or not at some point. And if they decide to not remove them, there should be a feature in the game and not a logout macro that you have to install. Like, give us a hotkey for logging out. If it should be in the game, give us a hotkey for logging out in the game. I would prefer that over having to have logout macro. And if it's not to be in the game, like as a feature, then they add a timer like Diablo has it. I think they have like 10 seconds or something if you log out. And I think that is an important thing to have. But of course, that would require some rebalancing. And I, for one, I prefer the game without logging out. I really enjoy the Labyrinth, where logging out has a penalty even in softcore. Like, if you have to redo the whole thing, and it's like you really think like 3 or 4 times before logging out. And I've died to that twice, I think, that I didn't want to log out because I didn't want to redo it in hardcore, I have to say. And I died to Izaro because I was like, I'm not redoing this. And then I had to redo my whole character because that was a good decision. But I really enjoyed those moments. So those were like 2 of my best deaths ever, because I made the decision and that moment to not log out, and I still died, and it was just perfect. So I would prefer that not to be logouts and the game to be designed around it.
Just briefly to cut in there, if they did have a logout
I play,
button
what's it
in
called?
game, it wouldn't work because the second there's any game lag, you would press the button and the button wouldn't work. That's why you need a third-party logout macro, as far as I'm aware.
So I actually spoke to Chris about that, and he said that it might be possible for them to rig up something where it would work, even despite that, because they could have it running as like a separate standalone thing that runs independent of the game.
Oh,
basically installing a TCP disconnect macro for players, and then just having it hotkeyed to it. So he said that it would be possible to do something like that, and they are looking into it.
Whoa.
All right.
Just as an aside.
So they are looking into
Lagging.
keeping logouts as a part of the game.
They're looking into the idea of incorporating more things into the game UI, yes. I'll say that. I won't say much more about that, though.
Oh shit. Yeah, because we really haven't had like a. That's what Yoji said, right? That we really haven't had like a clear thing. Like they every time anybody's like, "You fucking log out, you bitch," and somebody's like, you know, GGG like 6 years ago said that it's part of the game, so and now we know that maybe that is their stance, that it's still a part of the game.
Well, I do have a direct quote, but I kind of want to hear from Cute Dog on his thoughts on the general kind of topic first, though.
I'm lagging pretty hard, so apologies if I cut out. Am I still with you guys?
For now, you're
Okay
in.
now.
For now? Okay, cool. So I think it's like I think about like the macro concepts of logging out. So one is like how much fun do you have in this game, right? So if you're pushing 100 and you die at like 99, oh man, like the bad
Alkaiser.
feels you get, the bad feels you
Alkaiser,
get
yeah.
like outweighs the like the sanctity of your game. Like, oh, I'm using a logout macro, right? So I can understand why people do it there. And on the other end, there are things in this game where it's like absolutely necessary. Like you look at RaizQT's, I couldn't move, man. You know, like that. There's shit like that happens. And like, you know, people like an entire Reddit community thinks he dies to like a bear trap when it's not the case. So there's like stuff like that happens that I think requires it. So I think, but then again, it's also a technical thing that I think ZiggyD needs to fix because, you know, imagine you have sometimes when you have a headhunter and you're using like Herald of Ice and you have beyond mobs and you're stealing a bunch of mobs from like the mysterious barrel worms, like you get like half a second to a second of input lag. And it's like these technical limitations. Sometimes you can't even react, even if you're the best player. You know, there's nothing you can do. So I think it's totally valid. But once again, I play softcore, so maybe my opinion is a little bit like it's whatever.
Softcore players look out the same, at least at the top of the ladder. Like, why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. It's more fun to YOLO things, though. Like, I would prefer it.
Mm-hmm.
You mean YOLO without a logout macro?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's always cool whenever, like, you drop to 20% life, a hardcore player logs off, a softcore player sticks around and runs around with 1 HP and pulls a fucking miracle, right? Except those miracles happen like, you know, 9 out of 10 times, and one time he's gonna die. And a hardcore player can do that too, but you can't really afford that one time dying, so you're more relaxed.
You see Ziz's recent death.
Oh, that was painful. I was shouting him to log out in that lab run. That was so bad. Have you seen that, right?
Oh, yeah.
He gets he gets low, gets frozen in the saw blade, and I'm just like, why isn't he logged? Why isn't he logged? He then survives, runs through the burning ground, and everyone in chat is just like, dude, what are you doing? Just log, man, just log.
No, stop.
Yep.
Oh god.
Yeah, but that's the mentality that Yoji, like, maybe we need more things like that, right?
Yeah.
That mentality that, you know, you don't want to mess up because of somebody else, or you don't want to leave because you don't want to repeat this. I think that would be cool. It would be a good trade-off.
Yeah.
More of that. Somehow, I don't know how you could do that in map. One portal. Ooh.
Every portal
maps.
you use, you get 50% reduced quantity. Wait, no, 10% reduced quantity.
50%. So 2 portals, no loot.
I'm dumb.
So I've played extensively both ways in hardcore of not having a logout macro and having a logout macro. For the first few years of my Path of Exile playing hardcore, I didn't use one, and then I started using one like maybe 2 years ago or a bit less than that. And I have to say, like, when you mentioned the YOLO thing, I thought, well, I YOLO a lot more now that I've got a logout macro. I used to play much more carefully and much more conservatively and never really get into bad situations. And I have to say, I have a lot more fun now playing with logout macro than I used to. So, because I do feel like I can run into those situations and like, well, I have a potential out here. It might not save me. I might die before I can react, but maybe not. But oh, like, okay, I feel like I can probably take this chance.
I make that decision a lot that like obviously sometimes you just die and you're like, well, I've been in the situation 99 times. I've made this decision because of the fact that I can log out. If I couldn't, I mean, what's the big deal? It's just one boss, or it's just one thing, or I could have just chaosed this map instead of running it. But you make these decisions based off of the fact that you can log out. So, but do you feel like you die more now that you've got the macro, or is it about the same, or you die less?
I probably die more now, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I think too. That
With the
like you
logo
take these
macro.
risks way too often and you just end up dying. And I mean, especially nowadays, logouts barely work ever anyway. Like you log out and just keeps you in the game for 5 seconds. Like I guess I'm dead.
Yeah,
I haven't had any technical issues like that, thankfully. But
But that's why I said that
don't know.
the game probably
Go.
would need like a little bit of a rebalancing if they removed logouts, like instant
Oh, yeah.
logouts, because
not a
there's-
little bit, a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
a lot.
agree a lot.
like a lot of the boss fights, for example, a lot of the mechanics that you kind of like, a lot of boss fights, but if once you go in hardcore, you basically either like you portal out in time, or if you get into a bad situation, lots of boss fights are basically once you're in, you're committed because you can't like leave the arena anymore. So that would be a difficult choice to make sometimes in hardcore, especially. Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
want to
but
play as
no.
risk averse as I would have to if the logouts were removed right now.
That's fun though. That's part of the game. It's based off of knowledge, right? So you need to have the knowledge whether or not you can go in that room and whether or not you can survive. And if you make a bad decision, well, most of the time you're gonna get punished for it. Well, now it's like, not today.
But
And
how
just
do you
log out.
get the knowledge? Like by making 10 characters, dying 10 times, and the 11th time you know what to do. That's a lot of time investment.
Yeah.
I think
But I
there's
think that's. I mean, listen, when you start up your character, it tells you like we're not rolling you back if it's lag, if it's whatever. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people disregard that, but yeah, I mean, PoE hardcore is a valid way to play the game, but people often forget that you do sign up to that little thing that tells you that this is like an Iron Man thing. Like this isn't smart to do, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's two quick things that we're forgetting though before we let Ziggy go with the quote. One, I think we're in the position where the guys of us who play hardcore, we played the game for so long now, we really don't care if we lose a character. Like, if I lose a character, I do not care in the slightest. And at this point, I will be way more YOLO intensive than when I first started, because back then, like, ripping and going, oh no, I've lost the last week, compared to, oh no, I've ripped like 12 hours of progress, it really doesn't affect me in the slightest now. And also, there's the thing where I would really like them to go back and actually make portals work, because that's another thing which really pushes logout, because there are some zones you can't portal out of. Like, if you're doing certain master missions, you can't portal out of the area. It never tells you that. So you get a lot of people who will die to trying to portal out stuff they can't portal out of. Stuff with lab, where you can't
The
portal out of
lab.
lab. Like, there are so many times people die trying to portal. And
Do you really want to portal out? Yes, for fuck's sake, I'm dying right
Yeah.
here.
And then you press yes, and the game hangs for 3 seconds. If you move your character or anything, the game hangs, and you need to do it again.
Maybe that's what they need for logout is a pop-up box when you try to log out.
Do
It's
you
like,
really want
wanna
to
log
press your
out?
TCP? Like, are you sure?
The second one, are you sure?
Did you misclick that? Did you misclick?
It'd be so funny watching people fumble and that shit while they're dying.
Maybe there was a hotkey for portals. That would be nice, because I hate having to open my inventory and like right-click the scroll, because I'm really bad at inventory management. And
Let's be real though. If we removed instant logouts and made instant portals on a hotkey, people would just stop complaining about logouts and start complaining about portals the exact same way they do.
You think so?
Like
I
nice,
don't think so
nice
at all.
portal macro streamo.
I think
don't
you would
think so
have
at all.
slightly less rage. You would still get rage, lol, nice portal, bitch. But with the whole portal
He's
thing,
still dodging a death.
I think people would be
feel like-
way less aggressive.
Oh.
I feel like you're
No,
underestimating the brain power of Reddit, Rise. Like, people complain if you use a certain MTX setup because it's unethical. Like,
I think people complain because they feel like you've got an advantage, like you're using fucking steroids, you know? Everybody wants to be a big boy, and some big boys use steroids, and this is kind of the same thing. But you're like, I don't want to use steroids. That's kind of what a logout macro is. It's sort of like steroids. And I don't think people would be mad. People are mad about the fact that other people have access to it and you choose not to do it. But if it was like an actual game feature, I don't think people would be mad. Like, I don't know. If it was clearly stated by GGG, this is the way the game is meant to be played, you portal out. It's an in-game function that everybody has access to. It'd be a little bit.
So you think like an in-game logout macro button, like what I mentioned, people would stop complaining about logouts?
I mean, now it's a little bit, maybe it's a little bit too far gone now, okay? But if the game set out with that, if that was the mindset of people playing the game when it first came out,
yeah,
I
maybe.
think eventually we would have. But this might also change. I mean, people used to think that, you know, scrubcore and all that shit, and everybody was playing a hardcore because of crip, and
Yep.
everybody thought that when you played softcore you sucked, and that was a mentality that GGG in the past has said that, you know, they really trained players to think that if you're playing standard, you're just playing the game. You're like a normal person. You're not some fucking idiot. Yeah. And they've said that in the past, that they're like, you're not worse. You're just normal. It's just other people are masochistic and like dying to disconnect.
I love
And
that
maybe
had to
they
be a
could
thing.
train people into that thought too.
You're just it's okay, guys. You're just a normal person. You're playing the standard game. It's just you're not a fucking idiot.
But that's what it was. No?
I remember they released a post pretty much saying that.
Yeah, exactly.
You can listen, community. You're not fucking idiots. Just normal dudes.
Yeah, I mean, like most people have always played softcore, right? Like for the most part, like the most time the game existed, I think most people have been playing softcore over hardcore, and I think it just got more and more softcore people now. So yeah, it is literally the normal, like average way to play the game, like the usual way people play.
In the past, it was so acceptable, right? Like somebody would come into Crips chat and they were like, "I play softcore." Everybody's just like, "Get the fuck out!" Like, it was just a community thing. Like people just got.
Yeah, it was pretty toxic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was toxic.
I think it's kind of weird though, because it seems to be doing the opposite thing. But the thing which I find weird, so people get more hate for playing hardcore. Even if you're a good player, you die, you're the worst. You're the worst piece of shit in the world. But the thing which I find weird though is people are still claiming that there's this hardcore elitism. I don't know if you guys have ever seen hardcore elitism like the last year, but there are a lot of people who are still raging on like this weird like mentality people still hate on softcore. I haven't seen that for such a long time in the community.
Yeah.
I don't understand where that's coming from. I don't know if it's just like something that people can't get out of the back of their head now, or I don't know.
We're sort of biased, but I totally agree. I don't know. I think we gotta ask Cute Dog here, because in my opinion, like, I get the you fucking bitch, you play logout core, and I'm like, I had 1 HP, I didn't log out, and I did this thing with. I'm not a bitch, and they're you fucking out there. You. It's just like
you have to accept it and
like
die like a man, okay?
Yeah, I feel like I'm the minority now. I don't know.
Yeah,
do you get a lot of hardcore elitism, Kid Dog? Like people come into your thing and you're like softcore.
yeah. There's some of that, but it's quickly. So I think people that they identify too closely with their character or their league, right? Like they think that if you don't do their thing, like their build or their league, then you're somehow either insulting them or not as good as them. And that's not really the right way to think about it. Like we're all playing this game to have fun, and maybe like in my stream, there's probably like just 2 people every stream that'd be like, "Hey, is this hardcore?" And then you'll say, "No, it's not hardcore," and they'll say, "Ha." Softcore scrub, bye. And like they have to like it's not enough for them to just be like, oh, okay. They have to tell you that they're leaving. Like no one ever just like leaves the stream. They always leave by telling you, okay, I'm out. And you're like, all right.
That is always the best thing when there's that one guy who's just like, I've watched this video, I didn't like it. Unsubbed, unfollowed, unwatched. Full stop, enter. Ha! Now they know.
It's funny because I swap every league between hardcore, softcore, and I feel like I get the most like hate and saltiness in chat when I play hardcore. If I die or if I log out, no matter what you do, you get like a ton of shit talking going on. Whereas I very rarely get any shit talking in softcore. It's like people don't have as much to complain about, I guess, when I'm doing that, apart from like the occasional person being like, "Oh, softcore." I do always get the question like, "Oh, why are you playing softcore now? Have you quit hardcore, Ziggy?" Every league, man.
What, do you log
Swap every
out on
time.
softcore?
Yeah, sometimes. Not as often, obviously, but
Do you
sometimes.
get do you get shit for that?
Mm, probably less so because I'm not dodging like the loss of my character or something, I guess, in people's minds, so I don't really complain. But
Okay.
yeah,
Interesting.
I guess I pretty rarely log out in softcore. Thinking about it,
I thought you were gonna go.
mindset kind of changes.
I rarely log out. I'm pretty good, you know.
You have to justify
No,
yourself.
I'm not.
Tess.
I usually
you
just
like.
accept it and die now that I play softcore.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I was like,
I ate a lot more deaths for sure. I mean, that's fun for viewers, right? Like they want to see eat a good death every now and then.
Yeah.
I mean, I usually die after I said like something like my build is pretty tanky right now. Then I instantly like some volatile kills me like every time.
No, the worst for me is if I ever say I'm really enjoying this character, it's dead.
Yeah.
Like it's right after you've spent all of your currency, like you've literally emptied your entire stash. Go, I'm really enjoying. I think this is the one I'm gonna try and beat my previous high. Oh. Right. Do you want to hit us with that quote now? Oh, I'm sorry, Ziggy.
Do you want to eat the mouse cursor? Oh, the quote. Right. Sorry, I was distracted. There was a mouse cursor lingering just in front of me. It looked really tasty. So yes. So this is what Chris sent me. When designing Path of Exile, sorry, let me get in the right mood here. Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. When designing Path of Exile, we had to decide whether it's a game where you can log out instantly or whether there's a delay when you continue to take damage. After playing games where it works both ways and finding the former substantially more enjoyable, we chose that option. This results in spiky damage and adrenaline-filled fights where you can back out at a moment's notice, either to town or risk closing the client completely. We've experimented with the alternative and didn't really like it. Because of this, logout macros are fine as long as they're triggered by hand. So that was a direct quote from Chris. It's pretty much what they had said in the past, and their opinions have not changed. For you guys who are wondering, it's pretty consistent.
It's pretty much
You guys
like
have any
the old quote from like 6 years ago, whenever it was.
I feel like if they would talk about this more often, we would avoid so much toxicity. Like, I don't know. Like, why can't they just say that more often? Like, people are still gonna judge you, sir, but just mention.
Maybe they like watching the drama.
Yeah. There's always
I'm
gonna be
sure
a
they
big
do
twist in the
actually.
game.
Chris is.
Maybe Chris is actually logs into like a Smurf account on Twitch and like whenever a streamer logs out, he's like,
Yeah.
fucking scrub.
Softcore scrub. Then he goes to the next stream. Hardcore scrub. I mean, there are probably a lot of people who just flame both sides. You just like flame anyone. They just go into one stream, be like, "Is this hardcore?" And he's like, "No." He goes like, "Oh, so of course, crap, I'm leaving." He goes to the next stream. It's like, "Is this hardcore?" Yeah, I'm playing hardcore this league. I was like, "Huh, elitist, I'm leaving." And I think it just feels like this. I think that's how it works.
Yeah. So you're saying the entire GGG dev team is that guy who once a month says, "Why aren't you playing D3 right now?"
I guess that's a good. I don't know. I guess that makes me a little bit less of a bitch for logging out, but at the same time, I still wish that they would have maybe experimented a little bit more with that whole. Because it must have been a long time ago that they experimented with a logout timer, right? Maybe it was recent.
Yeah,
Maybe
it
like
would
a
have been
race with a logout timer. Huh? I don't know. In Cutthroat, it was really fun that I was used to like. I barely ever died to players in Cutthroat, but I've constantly died to bosses because I was like, I'm just gonna YOLO this, and then it doesn't log you out, or you like can't enter a portal for multiple seconds. It's like okay, and then all your shit drops on the ground. It's like, yep, this run is over. Like I can't do anything now. I can't like if you die to players, at least you can like pick up some stuff every now and then. Here, no, it's just over. You're never getting back there. Yeah.
Okay.
I really enjoyed that, a timer. Well, maybe in the future a race.
Well,
yeah,
with
it
that,
could be fun as a race. Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, racing in 2K17. But anyway, so Path of Building and Theorycrafting. Now that Raiz has committed seppuku, I've noticed a lot recently that we've gone from the point of view of people who never really cared that much about, well, I say never really cared that much about tooltip. Now the main thing is just linking people paste spins and seeing how many millions of DPS you can get. Path of building, do you guys use it? Has it changed the way that you play? And is it fucking with people's mentality?
I guess I'll provide the non-extreme answer to begin with, and you guys can can have a fight.
Shit, I'm on the non-extreme end too, to be honest.
I'm
Go
on the
first.
extreme end.
It's a useful tool, and I've used it sometimes to answer some questions I had, like whether it would be better to go fizz ones or elemental ones, what would actually give me more DPS in the end, because it's really hard to calculate that in just your mind in game. It's basically impossible. And then I found out some useful information by using Path of Building, and it was a really cool tool, and I liked it.
You should just like clip this and put it into the advertisement.
ZiggyD likes it.
Uber's first. Shot right. Path of Building. It's a really cool tool and useful for answering questions you might have about changing gear and stuff. It does remind me a lot of in D3 how we had the tools that allowed us to input exactly what gear we'd have and how it would calculate DPS and stuff like that. But the game itself is not as simplified as D3 was, to where that's a big problem. Certainly Path of Building can, and I see like your concern, Tarke, that it could lead us in that direction where it's all just about tooltip worrying even more than some people already are, where it's just like, all right, well, this piece of gear gives me, 15% more end tooltip Path of Building DPS, and then kind of like trading in and out items and stuff like that on there. But I don't know, I think the game's a bit more complex than that, and DPS is definitely not everything in Path of Exile.
Yeah, I know.
Do you hear that? You hear that? DPS not everything.
I think
Mhm.
no, I only heard like beep when you say. Can you say that again? My brain just doesn't catch it because it gets censored immediately.
It's all about the projectile speed now. Before it was AoE. Now
Oh
it's
yeah, projectile speed is the main stat.
Projectile speed.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a freak out today on stream because whenever I tried to do anything through Path of Building, it was always wrong. Like I tried to calculate some minion stuff, I tried to calculate some resist stuff, I tried to calculate some conversion stuff in the past. It was always wrong. And today, I was like calculating something really simple with conversions for like a nice shot build, and now it's simple for me. But back then, apparently it wasn't, because when somebody was telling me that I'm wrong and they quoted Path of Building, I called them a fucking idiot, and that you shouldn't trust Path of Building because it's wrong all the time, and I was wrong. So
Well,
Turn
I
your
had to
love.
apologize for like the next 30 minutes.
You're like
I
those
was
guys in chat that I get fucking
You
enough to slap
idiot.
down.
I was wrong. And it was like a really simple thing too. And like that's the worst part, when it like dawned upon me that I'm wrong. I'm just like, how did I not even think about that?
Did you fess up and own that shit, Rise?
Yeah, I fessed up. I was apologizing.
man.
I banned myself.
But the thing I love, I'm paying myself. The thing I love about that the most is when someone like someone thinks someone's wrong and they're really really aggressive and hostile about it,
That's
and
what
then
I
they
did.
themselves end up being wrong.
I was so pissed off.
Yeah, I really hate Rise too. He does that all the time.
I do that.
Hopefully you've learned a valuable life lesson from that, Rise, and maybe just be like, well, let me just double check because you guys seem to be concerned about this.
So I'm on
Instead of,
I'm
like,
the medium. I'm
idiots.
the medium, I'd say. On Path of Building, I still think it was wrong a lot in the past whenever I tried to do things, because I only tried to do very specific things. But yeah, it's definitely got its uses.
I mean, it's made by one guy, right? Like, so it's a fucking amazing tool, but one guy's always going to have some mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, just like you made a mistake, right? I'm sure he's made some mistakes in creating the tool in the first place. So yeah, it's a good idea to not make that take what it says as gospel, but it is still very helpful with some stuff that's a bit overly complicated. And it's like, especially when it's like multiple contingent changes, because that was the problem I had with trying to decide whether like, well, do I spend 275 chaos on a fizz wand here? Like, I have no way of knowing if this is going to be more DPS or not unless I go and do all these contingent changes. The part of building, I can change the passives and the gear and the support gems all at the same time and compare side by side. And that was pretty useful. So it's good for that sort of thing.
I think it's really good. The main thing I use it for now is just hitting like sudden benchmarks when it comes to defense, like how much HP can I get with this setup, and that's the one thing I really like about it. So my new benchmark is like, if a build doesn't have at least 7k health, I'm not going to play it in hardcore. So being able to see just how greedy, like, could I actually fit a Queen of the Forest into this build? Because I found that, like, before Path of Building, I would have, like, this list of things that of items I like to use. Go, oh, you start being really greedy. I'm going to use this unique with this unique and this, and I'll move really quick and it'll be amazing. And then you actually don't find out until, like, mid 80s or low 90s, like, oh, hang on. Actually, this doesn't work. Drop this, put in a combs. Okay, now it works. That's one thing I do really like Path of Building for now, is just working out how much you need to tweak it. And, yeah, it just really goes to show, like, how screwed you are. If you the second you try and sub in, like, 2 uniques into random life build here, it's like, oh, that didn't go as planned. But, yeah.
I'm always disappointed when I see my end life values when I plot out a life build and Path of Building, and it's like 5.5 KHP, and I'm like,
Needs more counts.
this is a level 90? Yeah, 90. Fuck.
Not good. Yoji, extreme opinion.
Yeah, I think it's like already people are so focused on tooltip DPS that this like at this point in the league that I think that having Path of Building like focus so much on tooltip as well, like that's the main stat that those people will look for, and they will try to really optimize it, and then soon people will flame you for not using a added fizz ring instead of your weapon ally ring, because it's like, holy crap, this is like 200 DPS less than the other one. Because, and most of the time, or a lot of the time, people don't actually understand why and where the tooltip damage is coming from, and why, when it even matters and when it doesn't. Like, I played a lot of like Ignite, Flame Blast, and all that kind of stuff recently, and people will always ask for the tooltip of Flame Blast, which is the least relevant stat ever, because the damage is all from the Ignite. Like, if you're playing Crit Flame Blast, for example, your tooltip will be like twice as much as of an Ally Overload one, but Ally Overload is double dips, so it doesn't actually tell you anything. Like, if all your ally damage, all your damage comes from spell damage and crit, you will lose to a all ally fire and ally and fire damage one that all double dips by like billions of DPS. And yes, Path of Building tells you that, but it doesn't tell you where that comes from, and a lot of people will not understand it. And it actually takes some actually thinking about what you're doing in the program to understand it. And it has a lot of mistakes from what I've seen, because I actually enjoy doing the theory crafty bits myself. And it also, I don't even know, I've not tried it yet. Has anyone tried to make an Earthquake build? Because I have an Excel sheet that actually calculates Earthquake tooltip DPS dependent on delay to attack speed ratio. So you, like, because the DPS kind of like goes up with attack speed to delay, and then once you go over that tipping point where you attack once too many within the frame, your DPS actually goes down again. So I wondered if Path of Building, for example, has that. There's lots of stuff. And when I first tried it, Diamond Flasks were wrong, and I was like, no, I'm not using this. It's probably wrong at all points. But now they are correct.
I worked out, yeah, it was because they took into account like accuracy and evasion of the random mob. That's why the crit values seemed weird. So,
yeah, and they took it into account the wrong way as well. Like they checked accuracy, I think, like twice, which is normal, but then one more time for the Diamond Flask, which is not correct actually, and so it's kind of gets weird.
So messed up. It's hard to tell those people, like if somebody's playing your build or if somebody's asking like, what's your Flame Blast DPS? And you're like, well, I don't know what you're asking. It's like 1,000. And he's like, I've got 20,000 double strike DPS. It's like, I don't care. Your build's not 20 times better.
That's even a different question. But even for two builds, it matters, like especially with double dipping, it matters so much where the DPS is actually coming from. Lots of other things as well. Yeah, but I think at least it provides a more accurate double tooltip than what's it called, the in-game stuff like EA or whatever. Like I do 30 DPS.
Let me say this. Looking at the big picture of Path of Building, I remember a story, Rise, that I heard somewhere about at a certain meetup where Tarke Cat goes around to people and he goes, hey, what's the best support gem for Burning Arrow? And then people would be like, is it weapon elemental damage? And he'd be like, okay, what's the second best support gem for Burning Arrow? And that's like how he'd start the conversation, you know? And so from a new player standpoint, Path of Building is very nice to just instantly sub in some support gem or something and see like the macro picture, right, of your build. And I don't know if the story is true or not. I just heard that.
That literally happened. I I'd learned about the less damage thing like a week before, and it was still mind-boggling. And I wanted to. The thing which was funny though is it wasn't even like any of like the pro PoE streamers who replied with weapon elemental damage. It was some random pleb viewer, right? So I was like talking to Zizma, I was like, "What's the best link?" And they're like, fire pen? I don't know." And he's just like, "Weapon elemental damage." I'm like, "Fuck. Okay, the second best."
He would like walk to people individually. He'd be like, "You got a moment?"
I was really
Yeah,
drunk.
let me
I
tell
was
you
really
real
fucking
quick.
drunk,
Charlie
man.
wants to like hit on his grandstand about some support chat.
Yeah.
People don't
He
know
walks
about.
off with the next
I was
person.
like, oh,
We're like,
okay,
"Did
fuck.
Tarke talk to you guys about burning arrows?" They're like, "Yeah."
Everyone knew that by now. Like, I think by the time he asked me, I think we were sitting at some market, like at the side of some market. He asked me that question. Everyone around was like, just like that question again. But I didn't hear it yet, so I was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, what is it?" And he's like, "Well, actually, you might think it might be something else, but it is less duration." I'm like, and everyone else was just sitting there.
Then he got aggressive about it too later on. He was like, people would guess weapon elemental. He's like, "Guess again, bitch."
Yeah.
Restoration died for our sins. Oh god.
But anyways, so like that's on one side for newer players, it's great. You can test out those very simple things. But I think like at the end game, when you've been playing your build for a while, right? You know the feel of your build. I think that's more important because it's like, if you need more attack speed, you get more attack speed, which is like your mobility and how fast you can get to the next pack. And there's very rarely going to be a build these days that lacks on damage. The items and the stuff we have in the game are just so crazy now. And so I think also a lot of confusion comes from like the tooltip warring. They care about single target, right? They're like, my build on the forums has 170 million DPS, and then the new player would be like, "Oh wow, 170 million DPS," but that's not like real DPS, right? If you want to do like different kinds of content. And so like something I was thinking about was like, let's say you had a build where it was a unique item that you equipped. It was like when the boss is on your screen, it instantly dies. The second you can see the boss, it's dead. But the downside was you can't use movement skills, and you have like 50% reduced move speed. Would you use that item? And it's like, no, you wouldn't, right? Like you care more about all these other things. And I think once you play a certain build to a high enough level, I think it's less important to focus on like the numbers, like is 20% crit better than 12% spell damage. It's more about like, what do I need on this build right now? And so yeah, so I don't like the whole tooltip war or anything.
No, I'd
but
agree with that 100%. Like my last three. Oh, sorry, go. I'll go afterwards.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask real quick, like, do you think that it's this tool in general existing, and people are very like, I can personally tell people are really aggressive about it. They're like, why don't you just use path of building? Do you think that it's good for newer players? Is it actually helpful? Does it dumb people down? Like, do people stop thinking about what they're actually doing?
I think
or is it more like for people that are, they just have like a really complicated build and it's hard to calculate these things?
I mean, there are builds that's great for like low life righteous fire or something. Doing those calculations by yourself is just annoying, and I can definitely see why people would be like, I don't want to deal with this. I just put it in, see if I have enough regen, and don't take too much damage. I think that's great, and there are probably lots of those examples. But I think overall, it doesn't really dumb it down anything because the program still needs you to have the knowledge to where to put stuff and to understand which values are the important ones for your build, right? Which damage values actually apply to what you're doing. But I don't know. I don't think it's really needed all that much. At least I don't feel like it. I think that as Q-Dog said, it's way more important that the build just feels good to play, and that you at some point you will get a feel for what stat you need next and what would make sense by just looking at it and just having a good rule of thumb idea.
Yeah,
so I don't think it's
don't
needed.
Have the time to do it.
But it's nice to have, I guess, because it's more information for the people who can use it, so that's always a good thing. So I don't really think you can blame the creator of the tool for like some people abusing it to pressure people into playing how they want, or like trying to pressure people into playing how they want.
Yeah. I mean, I think a couple of things I'll add to that. One, I think it's an amazing tool, and I will happily spend 5-6 hour streams staring at Path of Building, as chat's well aware. But also, I think one of the best features about it is actually be able to import people's profiles. That's really undervalued, and it makes making like guides and builds so much easier because I can now like theorycraft a character, pre-input all the like the gear setups I'd want, and then people can just import that straight in, and they have that saved there, and it's like just easy. But I will definitely agree with the feel thing. So my last 3 builds they were all split arrow because I'm an idiot. They were a split arrow ignite based raider. It was then a Doomfletch split arrow pathfinder, and then a poison split arrow assassin. Now the raider felt the best, obviously because it was a raider and it had the lowest tooltip damage. Then it was the Doomfletch pathfinder, and then it was the assassin. Now the assassin was the worst to play, even though it had the way more impressive numbers, because it's an assassin, and raider is so good right now that pathfinder feels clunky to me. So it was one of those things of like, when you play 3 builds like that back to back using very similar setups, just losing that like automated gameplay for the frenzy charges, that extra movement speed. I think people really do undervalue stuff like that, because you can go like, oh, but your thing only has like a 5th of the damage of the other thing. But when you're only doing stuff like Strand farm all day, every day, you'd much rather be a raider. And when it's a situation of I'm putting chain and fork on tornado shot, that's one of the things a lot of the softcore players are doing now, is they're doing fork, chain, tornado shot to farm speed clear. Now, from a tooltip perspective, that is the worst thing you could ever do to your setup. But it is insane. You shoot once, you clear the entire map, you keep going. So I do think that aspect is being lost, and I'm having to spend a lot more time convincing people now of why you should go for these kinds of setups. But overall, I think it's a good tool for the community.
Yeah. Agreed.
Interesting. I thought it was the opposite way, that it would like you were talking about how the lowest tooltip was the best, and I thought that would be confusing for a newer player, right? Because they would pick the biggest tooltip. But I guess it can work in the opposite, because like oftentimes people just don't have the time to figure these things out. Like, we've got a little bit more freedom than the average person when it comes to playing video games, some of us anyway. And we can just like, if the build doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. So we go for the feels of it. But then if they put it into path of building, because they're like, okay, I have to min-max my time, I have to do this well, otherwise I'm going to waste a lot of time that I could potentially spend playing. And in this case, they're gonna run into a problem that actually they chose the worst option because they went for the highest tooltip.
I mean, that's still going to happen even without path of building, though. People are like, well, assassin gives me way more DPS. Look at all these DPS nodes, and they're still going to make the same decision if they were going to make that decision in the first place.
Well, they're not going to do that, to be honest, because when you start your character first, it's not said anywhere that you have some assassin or trickster or whatever. Nobody knows anything about assassins.
That's the worst.
Not said
Hi,
anywhere.
I've just made a ranger. What do? And you're like, oh god, I need to crush this boy's souls. What level are you? Oh, I'm just coming up to Act 4. You're like, oh god. Do you know what ascendancy is? What? And you're like, fuck. Right, what you want to do is delete that character, start again, follow this guide. It's just like...
Yeah. And I think the ascendancy should be part of like when you select your class screen, that you kind of get like some rough idea, some rough description, some fancy graphics. And in general, I mean, they could also overhaul the screen a little bit, because it looks like super old school and not very up to date.
The fact that they don't talk about ascendancies still is so crazy to me. Like, I understand that, people open up the skill tree and they freak out, so GG definitely doesn't want to throw all this information at them at once, but it's such a crucial thing. I mean, you can play, a Templar, like, they don't really see. Well, I guess a new player wouldn't really see the potential of like a necromancer in a different environment than having summons.
Yeah. But that's something that you can figure out later. I feel like usually what I tell new players, that they should just choose their base class, but like what playstyle they would expect it to do well, because that's what it will do well. Like if you want to play a bow character, you'd select a ranger, and you will probably be able to make a bow ranger that kind of works. Yes, you can make a bow inquisitor that might be better, but that's not for a new player, I think, to just jump into right now. So kind of like if you want to play something that casts spells, choose a witch. You will probably do well casting spells at some point. And that's kind of like
that also feels really bad, no? Like if you're, oh god, I can't think of like an example, but for instance, you're some sort of caster, right? And it just makes sense, a witch, right? And you think elementalist or something, even you've got the ascendancy figured out, and then it turns out somebody tells you, well, actually everybody plays this as a pathfinder, and that I feel happens a lot, and people are like, people often freak out about like one stat lost or a passive point that they've messed up. Here it's like, yeah, your character's kind of garbage. And even though he can play the game really well, and if you were Pathfinder, maybe he would play it 10% more efficient, that still feels pretty terrible that you know that your character will never reach like even being close to being perfect. Yeah.
How would you feel, and this, because it would be nice if they did talk more about subclasses, and for the record, the new Xbox trailer does directly show the subclasses, so that's something.
Mm.
But I don't think they could really add it to their character creation because it would bog stuff down too much. Would it be a terrible idea if there were basic character templates for new players? So, like, there was somehow, I don't know how you'd implement it, but, like, you click and there was, like, a base template that you could follow. Now, you'd say, oh my god, dumbing down the game, like, Pitchfork, kill him. But currently, what people do, if you don't know anything about Path of Exiles, you pick the one which is like, oh, well, that's a ranger, so that's a bow. And you just rando fill in nodes, and then some dude tells you, no, your build is shit. And you either rage quit the game, or you reset all of your progress. Is that really, like, a crucial learning experience, saying, oh, by the way, mate, your first character is a waste of your time, just so you know? Because that's basically what the game currently does. I think there are very few people who make their first character. Someone says, actually, this is how you do it. And then they spend the 50 regrets to fix it and do it. I don't know.
There's not much they can do about that, though, right? Like,
well, if there was the base template thing, then you could choose to follow it or not, and then at least new players would have a higher success chance without having to delete their characters or whatever.
We're getting to a point now where even like a shitty developer-made build, as in like, you know, these template builds are always shitty, right? Like,
Yeah.
This is nothing against GGG. These builds are always shit. Even one of those can do like most of the content in the game. So you could have something like a suggested outline for each like archetype or something.
Even like put it on the like. Come on, I know like lore is important to some people, and I'm a lore freak, right? But how about if you click the witch, instead of talking about how she used to smoke human joints, she instead talks about how she's like an elementalist or a necromancer potentially, you know? So just sneak that in there so people have that idea in their mind. I think.
Where can I get some of the human joints, right?
I don't know. Like, have you ever listened to the thing? Right?
Did you ever smoke an elbow? That's a human joint, right?
I don't know.
They are pushing towards more new player friendly stuff, like the community managers before the leagues. They do that thing where they post like the streamers' beginner guides on a community like sticky post, right? So.
Yeah, but what about, like, we're going to have all these new Xbox players. Like, there's going to be this massive influx of players who haven't touched the game before. So if you're ever going to make any changes to maybe make the game less of a trial by fire, I feel like having some base, like, by the way, the character selection's a bit shit, we've improved it. I feel like now is a very important time to do that.
For the record, I think they are like doing quite a bit as far as like adding some tutorial stuff and that alongside of the Xbox. So we might see some of this stuff maybe.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll see character templates, but maybe more information for starters and stuff like that they can look into.
Yep. Just like explaining support gems and stuff a little bit better. Like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff to be improved tutorial-wise, so anything they do could just help a lot already.
Okay. Well, moving from theory crafting to actually, like, strengths of builds and stuff. So, how do people feel about the current keynotes? Ignoring the boring Life Verse Energy Shield, I'm currently playing a Mind Over Matter build, and just adding those 3 extra nodes to it really is amazing how that's opened up this amazing new spectrum, and you don't suddenly have the, oh, I'm in this section of 3, I have to play CI. Are there any other nodes you guys would like to see some treatments or new mechanics you'd like added onto the tree?
Can I ask you, like, roughly what your build does with MOM? Because I'm just wondering right now.
Okay, so it's a pretty wonky setup. It's a self-cast Detonate Dead Elementalist.
Mm-hmm.
It will have, with like decent gear, it will have about 6.5k life and about 3 to 4k mana. With just like decent gear. So that's like a combs and some random res. With like very like proper good gear, you could push to maybe about 7k life and you maybe like 4k plus mana. So you're kind of looking at the bare minimum, you're looking at like 10k effective HP.
Okay, but you're not doing anything with the mana, like going like Kitava's helmet.
No.
Like
it's like I have a clarity,
Hierophant.
and that's it. It's just like it's a Detonate Dead Elementals build. It runs clarity. I'll use like 300, 400 mana on that, everything else is completely normal, and I just do giant ignites. And dual wield Dorianis, I wanted to not use a shield because I wanted to dual wield Dorianis. So then it was like, I don't really want to go CI because I didn't have like a 900 ES chest lying around. So I just went, let's do Mom. Let's go with it.
All right.
How do you guys feel about the Mind Over Matter changes, the new nodes behind it?
Love it.
I like it.
Best thing ever.
Love it.
Yeah.
They seem pretty
Yeah.
good. I didn't try it yet, but like on paper they seem really good. Like some flat mana, some nice percentage mana. Should be nice.
Oh, it's juicy. It's very juicy. Yeah, I've always loved Mind Over Matter, and it needed that love for sure. It was just couldn't get enough mana for it to be worth it before.
Yeah.
Unless you were like Pledge of Hands or something. But now we're do you think it's like interesting that we're seeing like even CI builds pick it up just for the mana and stuff like that?
Yeah,
as
that's
efficient
something I
mana
like.
decks?
I mean, I like how like even though for like the top meta builds, you're still going with, Ghost Reavers, CI, Vault Packs, stuff like that. It's nice to have these like other keystones that you actually think about now instead of just being like, no, like never, right? And like I have a funny story. I have a friend who just started playing the game 2 weeks ago. And let's give you an idea how new he is. He was asking me about how do I play this Spicy Boys build. I was like, Spicy Boys? What the fuck is that? And he's like, yeah, you summon like 20 of them, they kill mobs for you, and they run around. I'm like, summon raging spirits? He's like, yeah, that's it. And I'm using zombies. And then so he
Spicy boys,
yeah,
like
he
baked
called it
chicken
Spicy
messages.
Boys. And so
Spice Boys.
he gets to level like 60, I think, or like 53, and he's got no life on any of his pieces of gear, right? And he's like, why am I dying so much? I died 100 times to Cruel Malachi. And then most recently he texted me, he's like, yo, I picked up this Mind Over Matter node, and now I have a little bit more HP. It feels a lot better. And so, I always think about like from a new player perspective, it's nice that there's these nodes that are, they don't have to be the best, but they, if you're able to pick it up and get some fit out of that like early on, or for a new player, that's excellent.
Yep.
They're beautiful. I that's especially why I like them, to be honest, because they just are so like usually when we're talking about nodes, it's like something you path to all across the skill tree, or something you have to really go out of your way to get so you can finally like really utilize it in your build. MOM, you just pick it up immediately and it works really well on the early levels. Sure, it's a little bit overpowered on the early levels. I mean, you've got more mana than life most of the time anyway. But it works immediately, and you don't really have to build around it. And I think a newer player just looks at that and he's like, okay, so I've got 60 mana right now. This gives me 100 base and 40% more. That's clearly something I want to look for, and it is something that a player at level 20 can clearly aim for when just skimming through the skill tree, right? Like you look at Eldritch Battery and you're just like, what the fuck? But then you look at MOM, okay, that sort of makes sense to me as somebody who's just learning. I can try to get over there.
Yeah, I think MLM is really good, as in it's just really easy to understand what it does. It's just super clear, almost no hidden mechanics, which is very rare in PoE. I mean, it doesn't protect against Degens. Okay, that's the one hidden thing that it doesn't say.
Doesn't work with Energy Shield.
Yeah, it doesn't work with Energy Shield, but then it kind of says it at least.
Yeah, it says live. I mean,
but yeah, it's something that you maybe would expect it to do. But one thing I think is that MOM currently is kind of in a good state, and I can definitely see if there are any potential CI nerfs on the horizon, which already have been confirmed, depending on how strong they are, that MOM might become like the new caster meta once again at some point, or at least like something that is one of the viable and like top options, because it is really good, and it's a really good way to get lots of effective HP in addition to what you already have. So I think it's currently seems to be in a pretty good spot, and maybe once ES is not the be all end all, it might be something that we will see a lot more of, and maybe some interesting synergies gonna happen with. Maybe make Hierophant might be more popular again, and who knows.
I think one of the big issues with the new mob nodes now is it makes Eldritch Battery even more what-face. Because Eldritch Battery before was pretty niche, whereas now it's like, oh, well, why would you ever take Eldritch Battery? Because you can just take these mana nodes now. So,
yeah, EB needs something different.
Like, how would you guys change EB,
agree
or
with
would you just
that.
leave it as is?
I would leave it as it is, honestly. Well, I would definitely do some like slight improvements to it so that it feels like you're actually picking up something. But it all boils down to the strength of auras, right? Like, it has to do something further the same way MOM does something further, because obviously you're sacrificing your uh your mana, right? You're sacrificing the potential of running an aura, a blasphemy, whatever, to be able to have more effective life. But who cares if you have 700 more life if something like enfeeble blasphemy setup would reduce the amount of damage you take from everything by 2,000. Yeah. But in this case, it's like, why don't you just stay hybrid? Unless it's something where you do have that mana and you fully utilize your aura so that you get rid of all your mana and you're still capable of casting spells that are pretty like mana intensive. Yeah. For which
It's
case you can
Such
use
an
like Vocal Clarity
ordeal
or
to make
something.
that happen.
Yeah, but there's no like real. This feels really good about that. MOM
Yeah.
got that right now. Right now it's, but when it comes to EB, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I feel like MOM, like pure MOM with the new nodes, kind of like fixes two problems without really giving you another one. It has the downside of you usually run like one less big aura, but it gives you it solves your mana issues for the most part, or at least gives you like a big step towards solving your mana issues, and it gives you effective HP. While EB, it usually basically gives you one additional aura because you can reserve all your mana instead of having to leave like this tiny bit out or whatever for sustain. But at the same time, you kind of have to fix your like ES region in some way. You have to be like an occultist, or you have to use Zealot's Oath and give up your life region, which is kind of annoying. I always find it super annoying to have no life region. That's why I don't really like Valpact all that much. Or you can also use Ghost Reaper, I guess, with it if you really want to, but then you have no life leech, which is also pretty annoying to not have.
So
So
Yoji,
you-
you kind of segue nicely into my idea for Eldritch Battery then, because as you pointed out, there's like it's pretty fucking rough, like giving
Yeah.
up all those things. So I feel like Eldritch Battery needs some faster start of energy shield recharge behind it or on it or something like that, to the point where it starts recharging. So like the idea of like, let's say I'm playing a totem build, it costs a lot of mana to cast my totem, so I drop it down, costs 200 mana or some shit. And then, as I walk over and I move over slightly, and then it started recharging already, and then I can cast again. So like the recharge timer is starting between like casts essentially.
So it would be the kind of like the niche to follow, like to go for when you're playing a build that has like low cast speed, high mana cost spells.
Yeah,
basically.
something like that. Yeah.
That could be a thing, yeah.
Yeah, but even that would work. I mean, there are ways to keep your energy shield from, to keep your energy shield regenning, like Vol Clarity, for instance, or even Vol Discipline. Like this would only further improve that. Or you can use a mana flask that makes it so that nothing costs any mana. That doesn't work anyway. But you can do stuff like that. I like that idea because energy shield, like faster energy shield recovery, it's really hard to get, really. It's like Leo mod, there's Essence Surge on the skill tree, and like a Quiver or
Trickster
two.
also.
Or Trickster too, yeah. But that's pretty hard to get for like the average build. So that would be really interesting, yeah. It's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I think one of the things, this is just like a small sort of pet peeve, is I'm not a massive fan how the current way of fixing things though is just, oh, let's just add 3 nodes behind it. And I feel like we're in this position now where, like, even just the way that Ziggy suggested to improve it, it's a very good suggestion and it would help it a lot, but I don't really want to be in a world where to make every node viable, we're just slapping 3 points behind it, because it makes it feel a lot less impactful. And it steals points from the rest of the build, which adds more investment cost into it. And I don't want to be in a world where just every node has 3 points behind it, because that's pretty boring. But at the same time, can you really have one super node, which is like, you have EB, and regen, and this? So, I don't know.
I mean, there
used to be.
Yeah, there are lots of keynotes that have like lots of text. For example, I don't know, Acro has like, you have like some dodge and then all this stuff is nerfed. Or...
But are there any which have loads of positives, though?
Loads of positives?
Yeah, because the EB thing would be like 3 positives on one node, whereas Acro is, you have this, and then these are the downsides which balance Acro. Because you're not going to have like Acro, and then 3 points behind it, which nerfs armor and ES. You go, oh, I can't wait to pick up this node and this node. Oh, now I can't go CI. So you have to put it into that one node.
All right, yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know really, but would it be a problem to have like 2 or 3 upsides on a keynote? I mean, it doesn't have the same ring to it unless I think one of the best nodes is probably RT, which is just super simple.
Yeah.
It's like clear what it does, and it just works, and it always did, and it's just really good. It's a good design. It's just I think that's the best example of a keynote we have in the game. It's just like can't crit, always hit, make a build, feel free, it works.
Yeah.
How do you feel about RT versus LEO Blade out of interest? Because it seems like it's been a long time since I've seen a non-crit elemental build not go EO. It's been a really long time.
Remember when they added that? I'm like, oh my god, what? This is so overpowered. How are they having
Yeah.
this? Surely this is gonna get nerfed. Here we
not-
are.
It's
6
overpowered.
months or a year
it
later
works.
or whatever.
I mean,
it's really
yeah, it's an
fucking good,
elemental,
though.
but it's made for elemental builds that are non-crit basically. So yeah, why would you go RT on an elemental build if you are non-crit? That's what EO does way better because it actually adds damage.
I
I feel like it was the first pure power creep node that was just kind of like whacked in the tree, and it's like yeah, let's make non-crit builds stronger. So let's just fucking whack a 40% more damage node in the tree in the middle of that area. I mean, I love LE Overload because it feels good when you level and you pick it up and you actually have some damage. It feels fucking awesome, but
It just adds another link basically.
design wise, it's not really on the same level as Resolute Technique. I don't think. I think it's kind of. I think it's kind of dumb.
Although RT when leveling, picking up RT is just like, oh, finally I'm not missing all the downtime anymore. It does feel really good, but it just doesn't up your damage by 40% more.
Well, I also think it's also a really bad node because I've recently been playing some elemental attack-based builds, and that means you nearly always start in like the ranger section. And then when it's like your best node is the last node you get just because of natural rooting, that feels fucking horrible. And I don't really know how they'd combat that. But there are so many builds now which can like you start either in like Duelist or in nearly every single case you start Raider or Pathfinder and you go boom. And there's no way you can get that before level 70 and leveling that just feels fucking terrible. But the second you pick it up you're like, haha, I have a build now.
I think that's maybe trying to push people to make more Inquisitors as ally attack builds.
Do you think they would ever move the placement of it, or do you think it's kind of just like locked in that section there?
I can see them move it. Maybe as either as a nerf to put it like into a less easy spot to get to, or maybe just because.
Really, I like the node. Like I think LE Overload is boring, sure, but I love what it accomplished. Like, hey, you guys if you're playing a self-cast like character or whatever, or even if you're doing totems, you're fucking doing crit. Especially with totems, you're like, well, there's no reflect, you do crit. And now, they add this like obnoxiously simple thing, and yeah, it's really boring, but it really accomplished a meta change. And it's a decision now. It's not always just you go crit or no. Now it's a real decision. Especially it's going to be a decision, I think, especially like if they were to actually fix double dipping in 3.0, aka fix butcher it, then I don't know if the meta isn't just gonna go back to everybody playing crit because you don't need that. More damage anymore. Yeah? So I just love what it accomplished. Be it boring, it's okay. And I would hate to see MOM be a single node also, because then it would just like whatever you would play CI, like whatever you would do, you're always sort of pathing 1 or 2 points away from it. You would pick it up 100% of the time. Even if your build it's not that great with it, you'd still probably pick it up. So I kind of like it. It also gives it for newer players, I think. I mean, already a Keystone's like a standing out thing, but this makes it even more stand out so that new players can like aim at it. So I like that. Notes behind.
So
in 3.0, I would like to see CI merged with phase acrobatics, but at the phase acrobatics position. I think that'd shake things up.
So you have to go through the 50% less ES.
Because then you get the same ES as the life. You get like 6k, right? At max. That'd be fun. And then you get a little bit RNG because you're like dodging stuff.
Jesus. Oh god.
It would still be better than life. Even if it was 6k ES, It would still be if you've got those more nodes behind. It would still be better than life. I mean, you've
I
got
will
more
say,
spots.
I will say that like acrobatics, like dodge, evasion, CI builds. If you can combine those three things together, that's like really freaking strong.
Yeah. If you get like a skin of the loyal or whatever it's called with phase aggro, like holy crap.
Pretty crazy.
Do you
So it'd
think
probably still be better than life.
do you think they're ever gonna like rework the phase acro arrow dancing setup? Because I don't know. I've spent a really long time convincing people to take phase acro. This league, I made a point in like my last 5 characters not taking phase acro to see what it feels like. Because there's those guys who just never take it to save those 4 points. Do you think they'll ever trim it down so it's like 2 points then phase acro? Or like throw life in there or something? Like I think if they had the middle note, even just had like 5% life on it, or 10% life, that'd be such a huge, like insane quality of life. Literally, because you no one's playing CI phase acro, so if in the middle of those dodge clusters you just put like a 10% life node there, I think that'd be fucking insane. And it wouldn't really break anything.
I'm not going to argue against more life for evasion builds, but I do think the phase acro cluster is fucking insane as is, and it's perfect. I don't think it needs to be buffed directly. I think it's good, yeah.
I think people underrate phase aggro quite a lot because spell dodge is great. Like lots of dangerous like shotgunning spells out there. Fire golems shooting out their fire spells, sparkers killing you with lots of like taking this basically from rapid hitting spells. This is basically less damage taken.
Yeah.
I don't really like stuff like that. Like if I get more life on the skill tree, and I've got 5,500 life now. If I get hit for 5,000, I know I took these life notes. They saved my life. But when it comes to phase acro, it's like, well, you know, when you die or whatever, it's when everything goes bad. And at that point, I feel like something like phase acro, you never know when it saved your life ever. But then when you die, it's like literally completely useless.
You have to have faith, bro.
No, I agree with that completely. So
no, there's actually an example where you kind of like notice like when block and dodge starts to save your life, because porcupines are the best example for that, because there's a threshold once you get like 60 to 65% dodge or block, you can run into a like instantly kill like a huge pack of porcupines. That basically don't take that much damage anymore. You actually notice that you actually notice that. I actually did some testing as well when I tried to get my roomies and like upgraded my roomies to 30% from like 22 budget one, and got the flask nodes. And there was an actual point where I was like, okay, now I can just like ignore porcupines and never die to them.
I've got like a childhood scar maybe or something from something, because I know what you're saying, right? Like obviously it does feel consistent sometimes, but like I've got like a childhood scar where, you know, the strategy in roulette where you always put it on one color or something, and then you always, whenever you lose, you double the bet, so that way you keep doing that, and that way you never really lose the money as long as eventually it lands on that, because every time you're doubling the bet, so whatever you lost, you're gonna get back. Yeah, one time I got 18 red in a row, and that's kind of how I feel like phase acrobatics is. But sometimes 18 things hit you, and all of those 18 things come through, and then you die. Like, but when it does save your life, it feels good. I just feel like there's other sources that could potentially give you that survivability in a more like direct visual way.
I think
but not that much added survivability for that few points though.
Yeah.
Also,
the amount of life you get to get phase acro is not like.
But one thing,
like let's say you have a 30% chance to be hit 18 times. If you do the math, like those 5 life nodes, there are a lot of more likely things to happen that can kill you at any time in PoE than this scenario. Because,
probably.
Like it's to the power of 0.3 to the power of 18 is not a large number.
I mean, I know. I just do agree that maybe if for me it would feel better like if it was combined with something that's more steady. Yeah, like what was mentioned before, the life notes.
Yeah, but like, so just an example. Because
how about a Kintsugi effect?
That would be good.
That'd be nice.
One thing though, so again, I'm the guy who's always says phase acro. If someone said don't take phase acro, I'd be the guy who'd spend 30 minutes lecturing them on why they need to take it. On my last 3 characters, I didn't take it. The current meta is you farm Strand. there aren't any bosses that you regularly farm which cast spells. If the League Stones weren't active, you never actually encounter that many spells. With Beyond active and Breach active, you encounter more spells. My last 3 rips, not a single one was to a spell. And when you actually think about how regularly you encounter them, and again, I'm someone who flames you for not taking phase aggro, for the record. But when you think about how many spells you actively encounter when you farm Strand, and the only meta really is farm Strand, I think it's kind of worth maybe looking at. Because there isn't actually that much of a push to take it, especially in a world where we're not going to always have Breach and Beyond active. And
yeah, in a world where that's the case, yes. But in the current league, like, I die a lot to Tool and what's the other name? Ash. And they both kill me with spells that hit multiple times. Like the lightning bolts, they kind of like stun lock me and I die to that. And the Tool just goes like Frostbolt, and I die to that as well. And I think Spell Dodge and Spell Block is really good against those.
how would you feel if you could dodge volatiles and bearers? Because I think if they changed those to be spell dodgeable, people would start taking fucking phase aggro. And I've never understood why you can't dodge that. And if they just did that tiny change, I would take phase aggro on every fucking build. I would be CI phase aggro. Don't
Isn't
give a
that
shit.
like a slap in the face though? Everybody's like, volatiles are fucking terrible. Well, guess what? Now you can take phase.
Well, no, but that again, it's like that.
Change the
Even that'd
mechanic.
be even better because you're not gonna face tank volatiles because it's still a 1 in 3, so you're still going to respect them. So it's not like you're saying like, oh, I've got this node, I'm now gonna face tank volatiles because lol, because that isn't
Oh
gonna
my
work,
God.
right?
This sounds like the worst experience of my life. Like I've got this huge build up. I fucking dodged every single volatile that's ever I've ever encountered, and then one time I don't see it. It's a big build up, and poof, it kills me. It's just like, well, I fucking had this thing the whole time. It didn't do anything, man. I don't know. Maybe if
Maybe
it was, like,
maybe
repeated
Val
mix.
Grace meta would appear then.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. That would actually be very cool because they nerfed Val Haste. People still run Val Haste over Val Grace. I thought maybe with the Val Haste nerf, more people might run Val Grace. People still run Val Haste all the time. So if suddenly Val Grace became more attractive, small changes like that where people are actually sacrificing clear speed for defense in modern day Path of Exile would be fucking amazing. It wouldn't happen. Like, even if Val Grace was you are immune to all damage for 6 seconds, but this guy's like, but dude, I move slightly faster if I press this button, they're gonna use the move faster option.
Well, you can run both. Like, people now do use Vol Grace in a lot of builds because Vol Discipline is like kind of poop. So
Yeah.
Vol Grace is like pretty OP. So much, and especially you get like influence and
Can you afford
some
to
of the other
run
stuff.
Val Grace, Val Haste, Val Spark? I don't play Val Sparkers. Like, can you get away with doing stuff like that?
Oh no, I don't mean for Vol skill builds. I just mean for like, you know, attack builds.
Yeah, but for like generic
like
builds,
that.
like currently my go-to setup at the moment is Val Lightning Trap because that shit is the fucking best thing in the world and I will never drop it. Val Lightning Trap, insert 1 Val Aura. So if we're now in a situation where we're like having to sacrifice Val Lightning Trap to run 2 auras, or suddenly builds which aren't Val Spark or Val Fireball have an advantage, I think that'd be pretty cool.
You can still run both though, because like you use the Vol Lightning Trap at like a boss, and that's at the
True,
end, right?
true.
So like on your way there, you like have it charged up, and then all your souls are only going to the Vol Haste anyways. Because usually, like when I play like attack builds, it's you spam Vol Haste when like it's juiced up, so it's not stealing any souls, and you just like at the end you finally smash the Vol Grace. But I think there's room for at least two Vol skills on most non-Vol skilled builds.
I have a question, Tarke. Have you tried playing a good build that uses a Vinktars?
Okay, right. Go on to
I
any
already said
fucking
it,
Mathel video right now, chat, and you will find him using Val Lightning Trap on like half of the builds. And with stuff like the Wise Oak existing, and if you play like range builds and shit in hardcore, you don't want to like point blank gameplay everything. Vinktar is good, but like, go rage at Mathel. He uses Val Lightning Trap. Fuck you. Fuck you.
I don't know. I love the idea of a lightning trap. I just think it should like explode immediately or something for it to be more justifiable and more setups. Otherwise, it just feels like clunky. It feels like like something you would use on a Zeri, you know, on fights that don't move around. If it wasn't so clunky, I would like a lot more. And I never play, like, I've maybe once played a Vinktar's build. Like, that's literally it. And it still kind of feels bad for me.
Are you guys using
Wait.
Decoy Totem out of interest, just as an off-topic thing? Because I think that's seriously fucking underrated. And Decoy Totem plus Val Lightning Trap is really easy to set up. Because you drop the decoy, then you can do your like pre-ritual setups.
Yeah. I stopped using it when I switched to softcore because I didn't care enough to have the clunkiness of it. But before I used it quite a bit.
I think that's still like one sleeper thing at the moment.
You get Illusion Man gloves where like you get hit and then your clone shoots out, so like turns them the other way as well. I like to be as lazy as possible, so maybe I'm a little bit biased.
Are you actually using a decoy in your Wonder setup, Ziggy?
I want to. I don't have enough strength at the moment, but yeah, Decoy Totem as Kinetic Blast is fucking amazing.
Just push them into the wall and then it's like Ez-Pez, single target boost.
Yeah, I want to. I try to use Decoy Totem whenever I can. Hardcore, it's really, 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 really good. Insanely good.
Even though it got nerfed, it's still really good.
On the Keystone topic, how do you guys feel about Iron Reflexes? I'm like, it's my like behind EB. I feel like it's the kind of, well, like it's not. I think it's uninteresting as well. I think Iron Reflexes is uninteresting. I want it to be something different. That's my problem. I want it to be something that supports armor evasion hybrid setups. Like, let's see a Keystone for.
Both mechanics, evasion and armor, are not all that great at the moment. I feel they're not all that great compared to just stacking more life or more ES or getting other forms of mitigation like Mom or Fortify or whatever.
I like evasion.
It converts like one thing you don't really need all that much into another. And I think armor is probably even worse than dodge evasion.
Yeah, I kind of like evasion just because, like, I feel like armor is a lot more easily available, like flat phys mitigation, and just get a iron skin granite, and you've got like 13,000 armor with like some basic flask nodes, stuff like that. But you can't really do that with evasion. I feel like evasion is still in a okay-ish spot. Sort of mechanic wise, yeah. Well, armor is just like it doesn't work. What if it was? What if iron reflexes was like 50% now, instead of you can't ever evade?
Well, you still can.
So
you still have that. Don't you still have that base 5% evasion?
Yeah, but
yeah. It's not like unwavering stance where you cannot ever.
Yeah, you still have some base evasion. One thing I remember, I got really excited the first time I thought about it, and then I got very suddenly unexcited, is I thought you could do Iron Reflex Queen of the Forest. Because I thought, it'd be great because you can stack all of this evasion, so you'll move really quick, and then also have a really high armor total. And I got like super hyped about it, and then I pressed it, and I'm like, oh no, it doesn't let me do the pre-conversion move. But I don't know. I feel like if we went back to a meta where people used to run like Determination and Grace, maybe Iron Reflex would become a thing again. Because that back in the day, like back in the day, we're playing Cleave, Static Blows, Iron Reflexes, good build. Like you get those two things. And Grace. Oh, fucking best build of the year.
I mean, would anyone use those more often if they cost less mana, like if they reserve less mana? And what would be a value where you would start considering those, if at all?
Determination should probably be a lot less. Grace, they'd have to be careful about because that gets really strong with CI builds, funnily enough. But yeah, that's true. Determination could probably stand to be like 10% or something, 20% reservation.
Like, make it free, who cares?
But yeah, those are two auras we don't really see that much of now. Grace is still pretty good, but
Vitality.
A bunch of flat evasion is pretty good, but yeah, Vitality. Well, Vitality has niche uses. Determination, not so much.
They made a juicy MTX for Vitality with like a little red swirly thing.
Oh yeah, that annoyed the fuck out of me. Why did they do that? Like legit, why did they do that? Like this is gonna see so much use, guys. All those Vitality builds. Wait. Yeah. Like, who actually RF doesn't even use Vitality. Nope. When RF doesn't use it, you know it's bad. Who does actually use it in an end game build, not as a stepping stone leveling thing?
Some Guardians can stack it in, or like some Necros supports to have one extra aura.
And they have like a bajillion auras active, so you can't see any one individual aura MTX anyway.
Yep.
I guess.
Good shit. It's good shit.
I use the vitality.
Yeah, how would you rework Iron Reflexes to be like a hybrid evasion armor thing? If you had to have, do you have any idea in mind?
It would basically be a completely different node. So by the Path of Exile rule of design, I would not replace it and just leave it there and then add another node, which is which is the Wild Strike Elemental Hit meta.
Yeah.
So I actually jokingly mentioned like some sort of Kintsugi effect, but maybe something like that would be a way to promote the use of hybrid evasion armor. Hey, I know you hate Kintsugi Rise, but imagine like a 1-pointer node that gives you like 20% mitigation if you haven't been hit recently.
I didn't say anything.
Or maybe
You raised your eyes.
Yeah, maybe something, or maybe something like
bro.
that increases or gives you like a more multiplier to your armor if you have evaded recently or something like this.
Yeah,
Because evasion gets worse.
That's cool. That's cool. I like that.
Because evasion gets worse the more you don't get hit because of the diminishing return. How do you call it? The entropy thing where you like if you get hit,
so you're eventually gonna get hit, and when you do, your armor's been juiced up.
Yeah,
I like
basically, the more hits you evade, by the time you get hit,
okay, I love that.
The more armor you have. That would be kind of cool, I think.
So it's kind of like a defensive Ellie overload.
Because that would, yeah, but it would. No, it's not Ellie. It doesn't give you any damage.
Well, no, but that's why I said defensive.
It's not power creep if it doesn't give you damage, all right?
Oh, no.
Fuck's sake.
But yeah, what I'm trying to say is like because it would incentivize stack
creep.
more evasion because the more you evade, the better your armor gets. And of course, the more armor you have, then the better the multiplier gets. So it's kind of like incentivized stacking both like to the max.
I love that, man. I want more support for hybrid defensive builds. Like no one freaking plays evasion ES builds that aren't like, you know, CI or something, and no one plays armor evasion builds, and you know, we have some payoff stuff for it now. Like there's some payoff items, but they're just still not good enough to actually warrant going them in the first place.
Do you think they can still save those mechanics, like armor invasion? Could they get them to a point where they're not like insanely broken again, or like insanely weak? It seems like it's something really hard to balance to be just okay. Like
yeah, hard to balance, but that doesn't mean they can't try.
The thing is, armor only mitigates physical, and evasion only mitigates attacks. So I think they're kind of inherently balanced so that you still have to get, like, evasion builds still have to find a way to mitigate spells maybe a bit extra, and armor builds have to find a way to mitigate elemental. Maybe if there were more elemental attacks from enemies in the game, those two could be a bit more interesting, because there are not that many elemental attackers in the game right now that are actually dangerous. I think like
I'm with you on
that are probably
although we have map mods are actually been helping with that a bit.
Yep. That's
added elemental damage to attacks.
But you can kind of avoid them if you have problems with them, at least to a certain degree.
Well, yeah, but the second you take like a face of added damage porcupines and go, oh, whoops. So.
Yeah.
And they kill you through your immortal call, especially.
Yeah.
It's especially good.
Or they shock you.
That's when you're like, that evasion would feel pretty good right about now.
You pop a fracture porcupine on an extra lightning map. It's like, yep, there we go.
I think that evasion currently is in a decent spot if it could get more life. Like, it works really well on the builds that it works well on. And if you have Enfeeble in your build and you're already running, like, a decent amount of evasion, it's fucking amazing. Like, my last character was... The split out character I started messing around with Detonate Dead was, like, 7k HP, 8k with good gear. It was an assassin, so it had enough damage. Enfeeble Arctic Armor, not Arctic, well, Enfeeble Arctic Armor, Phase Acro. Like, it's pretty resistant. Still gonna want to get one shot by a volatile, but you can face tank a surprise amount of content with that. Especially when you have good amounts of leech. Like, you basically, with enough evasion, you kind of get to recreate the CI face tank playstyle. The problem is you just don't have a high enough life force, so it doesn't work. Like, to do it, you have to use the combs. That's the issue.
I agree. I think so too. Like, mechanically, it has potential again to be interesting, but I don't think so about armor. Armor is
I think
broken
armor needs to
or
affect
just
Ellie,
garbage. Needs to affect what?
I think it needs to affect elemental in some way, even if it's like on some diminished return. I think the fact that it doesn't affect elemental in any way is really weird, because like I feel like armor's like the ultimate noob trap in the game, because it's like, oh, I'm an armor build, look at my sheet reduction, and people go, no, that actually doesn't work, and actually that's shit against most of the damage types. So It's like it's already intrinsically so misleading. I feel like it just needs something. This is where you go, and here's Zeno, and we pull him out, and he spends 30 minutes talking about armor builds, but I don't know really what you would do to fix it.
I think adding elemental damage mitigation to armor would make the problem that Raiz said even more, or like we would introduce that problem if it's not already there, because then armor would be really hard to balance because it mitigates all forms of damage. But currently, I think it's armor is kind of a noob trap, and it's not in a good spot, and it has problems with like clarity as of what it actually does, and when, for example, that it does mitigate bigger hits. Like bigger hits get mitigated less than it actually says, which is also like something that nobody ever like. How do you find this?
Yeah. I mean, you're like come from Diablo 3. You look at your spreadsheet, and it's like, oh, okay, I take 50% less damage, except you don't when it matters. It's like, not good. Feels weird to talk about armor like it's a real thing again. I remember back in the day when everybody was like, all you gotta do is get armor, and now nobody ever talks about it. It's like, it's such a forgotten thing.
Yeah, there's been so much more elemental damage added to the game.
Yeah. I remember listening to, it was before Coffee Talk was a thing. It was just like one of the things that Moors used to upload to his YouTube, and it was him, Wabba, and Noogie. And Noogie was actually like really talking up armor. And he was the thing that he was saying about it, which I guess is kind of true, is like even with heavy diminishing returns, it does do something. And you can notice it when it comes to certain things. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't want to just like quote him or.
That's
like,
not a great endorsement.
But no, but he was kind of saying like
useless guys.
No, but he was saying like
it matters when it doesn't matter.
No, but it's like when you're playing like insert caster build here. He was saying how like you can notice a difference where you have some armor on your belt and you have like decent full armor pieces. Like if you're playing like an explosive arrow character, most explosive arrow characters like they aren't investing into acro or phase acro, but they'll do their best to get like pure armor pieces everywhere, and it does do something. I honestly have no idea what you do to make armor better, but
it's so weird to talk about this too because yeah, I mean I can understand Noogie's reasoning. You know, I remember. I think our mentality comes from the fact that we don't really play things like kind of Cyclone anymore, I guess. Yeah. Like I remember when I used to play my Cycloner, this is like back in the day, I was like really squishy and I didn't understand why. And I was playing with Ziz and he wasn't so squishy. And then he's like, how much armor you've got? I'm like, 3,000. He's like, well, I've got 8,000. And I got to 8,000 armor. It's like, okay, all of a sudden I'm not dying to everything anymore. So maybe in these scenarios it works, but like it also like that works against the meta, you know, because it's something. Why would you even want to take damage if you can kill the thing in front of you faster than it can damage you, type of thing? So if you can stun it or kill it, why are you setting this thing up where it's kind of like a bastion in Overwatch, right? Like you've already got the advantage. Why further emphasize on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Nothing that deals physical damage really hits us anymore except porcupines. It's like we stun them or we kill them before they can have a chance to whack them, and a lot of them have really slow attacks. The big physical things have really slow attacks. You know, we're killing rowers before they reach us now, whereas in the past we weren't able to do that.
I mean,
we were like sitting there spamming out. Yeah.
But like, out of interest, out of the 5 of us, can not a single one of us come up with a decent improvement to armor? Because if we can't, like, what is GGG meant to really do? Is it just gonna always stay like this?
I mean, that makes their job, so they hopefully are better at that than we are.
Well, yeah, but I mean.
Okay, I have an idea. So I don't know if you guys have ever like watch your own VODs. Not that I do that or anything. I just heard asking for a friend.
That'd be weird.
But so if you watch yourself like doing a map or running around, your health bar or your ES whatever, it doesn't jump around that much. 99% of the map, it's like perfect, right? And so it's only like in very like niche situations where your health even moves. Like Ziggy was saying earlier, you just kill everything before they can react, or you're just moving too fast to notice anything. So maybe I'm not against making the game more complicated, but what if they did make the game more complicated and they made the armor work differently for white, yellow, and unique mobs? that way they could do the scaling individually and not have like, you know, just like this bad situation where like these massive hits make you have like basically no armor and the small hits are like 0 or whatever.
Wouldn't that cause the same problem though? Because like I'm guessing the way you're suggesting it is like how bosses have curse effectiveness, they would have like armor penetration, and mobs which weren't bosses won't have that. Is that what you're kind of suggesting?
Wait, bosses have armor penetration? What?
No. You said like wouldn't it work if they had a system where depending on the type of monster that hit you, it did different things to your armor? That's what you said, right?
Yeah, like, so the way I understand it, big hits is basically like having no armor, right? It's like a massive, like, how do you explain it? It's basically having no armor, and then like little hits, they do like nothing to you, right? So what if they had it where, I guess like rares or unique mobs, your armor is I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but maybe it's like more effective or something like that. Because for the little hits, it actually doesn't matter because you have things like Immortal Call, cast when damage taken, and even like a level 1 cast when damage taken, like that's linked to a level 3 Immortal Call. That negates every like Porky that you can encounter, or you know, every small hit you can encounter in the game right now.
Okay, so he's basically trying to do it the other way around than it is right now. So it becomes more effective against small hits, against big hits, and less effective against small hits because those don't really matter anyways.
Yes, let's go with that.
I mean,
Translating from cute dog to a normal clip.
I'm just thinking about what you said. Bosses do have armor penetration. It's called hitting you really fucking hard.
Yeah.
It's basically armor penetration.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's the big thing, I think. Like that.
Yeah.
What about the suggestion from chat? Sorry, I think it was Zultra, I'm not sure. Like 1% damage mitigation per 1,000 armor.
I mean, you'd have to
As in,
play
like,
with the
hard
numbers,
mitigation.
but
per 1,000 hard mitigation?
Yeah, I mean, it's just
it
a
would be
number.
very-
yeah, ignoring the numbers is a base mechanic.
Yeah.
I don't see what's wrong with it, to be honest. I don't know why we need the armor crushing thing in the game.
I mean, what's the cap for physical reduction? 90?
It would have like heavy diminishing returns.
Yeah, I put diminishing
That would have
returns
to be
into
like
it.
some diminishing returns because you can get like 50,000 armor, like 250,000 armor pretty easily if you like actually try.
Like, completely ignoring the numbers, because we could spend here for hours working what the sweet spot is. Do we think Path of Exile needs armor crushing? Just like base. Do we think that needs to be in the game? Because most games don't have it.
I mean,
I
there are some
personally-
bosses that have become really, 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 really easy if you mitigate physical damage too well. And there have been several nerfs to Immortal Call, like perma Immortal Call stuff because of that. Like Isauro, for example, Uberlap is a joke if you're immune to Fizz. That's why the whole Juggernaut thing, Juggernaut farming is a thing. And GGG have shown in the past that they don't really like that because there have been nerfs to like the duration and to perma Immortal Call several times.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, we do still have Immortal Call in the game. You can still get pretty high uptime of physical immunity. So maybe it's not that much of a problem if they get the numbers. If they get the numbers just right, I think that could be all right to have at least a bit more transparent system so that people could actually try to min-max it a bit.
I guess I'm not really like seeing the whole problem here with armor because it does, like, armor builds do well against things that deal physical damage, like, you know, Uber Azara or whatnot. But what is the problem, I guess? Is it more just the fact that they don't have a way to deal with elemental damage? Then maybe rather than changing armor, we just need to add something else that they have access to, potentially.
That could be nice. The thing is, though, that armor builds are not really the ones doing well against like those encounters because it's mostly like endurance charge builds, if you will, because those mitigate physical damage way better. If you add a basalt and have like 8 or 9 endurance charges, that's better than any armor you could ever get with the same investment.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of the problem, that armor is not even really that good at the thing that it does, which is mitigating physical damage.
Like, when
That's
was
what I
the last
loosely
time?
call an armor build. Is
Yeah,
it's
it
your
happens to
Juggernaut
be the
endurance
armor.
charges and stuff. Yeah.
Like, when was the last time people took the Juggernaut 2-pointer to double the body armor? Like, when that first came out, everyone was like, oh, but now it's like, no, do the endurance charge, get the fortify 2-point, don't get slowed. So
Never played a Juggernaut.
Neither.
Actually,
I mean,
never.
I think we gotta think about
What does
like
it do?
melee builds, right? Because like, does anybody know that? Like,
Oh,
I don't know
what?
if this is the mechanic, but like, if a mob starts its swing of its weapon and you move away, do you still get hit, or do you have to be
No,
within range?
you can dodge, like you can manually evade attacks in PoE.
Oh, okay.
There's no lock
Okay,
on.
never mind. I thought
you
it was
can
when they start
manually
their
dodge it,
swing,
but
you're
don't
getting
quite
hit.
a lot of skills have weird snapshotting where like, or has that been removed? I remember people used to talk about before, like if someone started a swing like Vol Slam, and then you press your flask after and it hit you, you'd get hit if you didn't have it. That's true, right?
Certain attacks, essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
That's still in the game.
Calculate their
Yeah.
damage before.
But you can,
Okay.
like, if you move out of the attack animation, you normally don't get hit anymore.
Okay.
Except for Exaro Wind's Left, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
You can move out of that anytime you want, you still get hit.
No.
But yeah, normally, like if you get slammed by Vol or something, and you move out of the way, or even like the auto attacks, like the normal attacks of skeletons.
Yeah,
you
like
can
a
dodge.
skeleton like swing. Because I was thinking like, what if there was a thing where if you didn't have any non-melee skill gems equipped, you got like a bonus or some shit. Because most of it's like if you're a ranged character, then none of this actually matters, right? Evasion, armor, none of it. You basically are immortal with enough, like good enough gear, good enough move speed.
I mean, I think that's
Sure.
what Fortify was supposed to be, was like some sort of solution to melee
Yeah.
mitigation.
And then most of the movement skills also happen to be melee attacks. Who knew?
Alright.
All right. Well, I feel like we've. Oh, go on. Do you want to say something, Yoji?
What about Unwavering Stance? Is that used still? I kind of wanted to bring that up.
Don't all the Raider hand builds use them, or do they stop taking that?
I don't know, cannot be stunned, cannot evade attacks. I guess if the Raiders are evasion builds, they're not taking this. It's my guess. But if they are not...
Wasn't there a whole thing last league? Weren't most of them rooting over to it? I remember seeing trees where people went and took those nodes, or am I just completely imagining that?
Could that be Ziggy's fault? I think he did that.
I don't take unwavering stance. Fuck that.
Wasn't you? It was like, I saw some guide on like a hand of something and something, whatever it's called, build, where someone did that. And I thought maybe it was from that guide, but
It's not like
apparently they...
the sort of build that would take unwavering stance typically doesn't like have any issues with stun. They have high enough life, or the occasion that you'd be stunned is just one big hit and then you just pop your insta heal flask. It's like
Yep.
you're not getting stun locked or anything.
It's in a weird
It's like-
spot.
People in chat are saying that a few people did it. Mathel did it last league, and they did it, and they converted all the strength into energy shield or into intellect on it. Like some people did take it. I think the main issue is just its placement on the tree. Like a lot of the melee builds, which would want to take it, don't want to route that way. I've played a lot of builds where I've gone, oh, I'd like to pick that up, but it's too inefficient. If it was on the outside of the tree, it'd be better. And also, there's the case that a lot of the melee builds these days tend to just be cyclone. Not so much now with the nerfs to cyclone, but when you have like a bunch of skills which make you stun immune, there's even less reason to take the stun immune thing.
Sorry,
So-
my bad. Apparently my Hand of Wisdom action build took it. It was like 2 leagues ago.
Yeah.
But
I was right.
see, but like that's a CI build, right? So it's like one
Yeah.
of the solutions to stun in a CI build.
Yep.
So it's a bit of a different story, right? I'm like talking like life builds and things that might take it.
I mean, it's in the life area of the tree, but yeah, I don't feel it's needed there as much. Maybe in the evasion area would be needed, but in the downside actually does something there. But yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. That it's like really, it doesn't have a downside because of its positioning. Like you don't have evasion if you're over there, so most of
It's
the
like-
time you're just kind of gonna take it. Like, but
It's
now
like-
we've also got like all these other things on gear that you can pick up. But if you were to put it somewhere where it does have a downside and potentially is a little bit stronger, right? If maybe the stun immunity items were a little bit weaker. Like, I mean, presence of Cholula, hello. Like, that's expensive, sure, but like even a regular Cholula or even a Valergum having so much energy shield, they're just really a little bit too strong. But if maybe they had like no stats, then it would be more of a decision, yeah.
I think that if Unwavering Stance was literally 1 point away from RT, a lot of melee builds would take it. I think it's literally just it's in a bad point of the tree. It's the same with like Iron Grip. Like Iron Grip
spot's
is an
not great,
alright
yeah.
like 1-2 pointer, but the problem is very few builds are ever in that section. If Iron
But
Grip
is
was
that a
next to
good
Silent
thing?
Life,
Like,
I don't
everybody
think it's a
taking
good
it?
thing when it's like when
I think
you
Iron
see
Grip is a great node.
when you see someone take Iron Grip now, there's like, oh, I happen to be playing a Bow Chieftain. This is like the one time I get to take this node. Cool. Like, even if
But
you
it's-
plan on building around it, you don't want to because of where it is. If it was like next to Scion Life, it would still be in a similar part of the tree. I would pick that up in a bunch of builds and like gear towards it a little bit.
Yeah, I think Iron Grip would be taken more if it was in a better spot for like at least some builds like Lightning Strike or whatever, Molten Strike, those type of skills could actually make some use of it, because if you're playing like RT Lightning Strike, for example, you would love that, but it's still like 1 or 2 points out of the way, and then you'd kind of like start thinking, is it actually worth it? I don't know. It gets a bit annoying to take. So if it was in a really good spot, I think it would be used in those builds.
Also, it doesn't double dip, and isn't it fizz only? I'd have to look at it. Doesn't affect Ellie, does it?
Iron Grip? No.
It is
Yeah.
it is physical because strength bonus is only physical, and doesn't double dip because it specifies attacks.
So even if it was like in a really good spot, like right next to Scion Life, not everyone would take it. So I think the fact that it is such a niche specific node in just the converting strength, that's already so specialist. Then it doesn't double dip and it doesn't affect Ellie builds. Like, it makes no sense being where it is on the tree.
Could be in a bit of a better spot.
Have we covered all the nodes?
We're just making
so.
kind of little noises now.
There's like
good.
Avatar Fire, Zealot's O, Ancestral Bond. There are a lot of those nodes still.
Okay.
Blood Magic.
Blood Magic's kind of fine. I don't know. I think...
I feel like
Magic
we've
is
covered.
Yeah, we've covered everything. So does anyone have a soapbox they'd like to jump on before we do the outro? Because last time Yoji wanted a soapbox about how much he enjoyed the game, then I soapbox about MTX, or are we all chilling?
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Oh no! I can soapbox for
Okay.
a little bit. So today, I was planning my fucking amazing builds. Okay, so get this. I've been planning this for a long time because it was a big investment. Get this. It's a Mjolnir, dominating blow, blood magic keystone, low life, Shavs using presence of Chayula build that uses the Scourge Claw. So it's a necromancer, and arc. And after fucking setting up my character for many, many hours, having a really good, I know this idea, right? After setting up my character for a really long time, I fucking go into Dried Lake and it doesn't work because it instantly crashes the server.